people, are they taking the mick out of us?
He could have just done what most knife crime recipients do, get it out of the kitchen drawer and stab it. It's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Again, it's just absolute not a failure to tackle the reality.
Yeah.
Oh, here's an idea. Maybe don't force a load of teenagers to sit in their bedrooms for 2 years on end. Maybe that might not help matters.
Maybe. Or maybe be a bit careful about people who have been victims of genocide. I don't know. That's another story. Julia Hartley-Brewer coming up. I'll be back at 6 tomorrow. See you then.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for your company. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Yeah, you knew that already. You've been listening to MG. Whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching your YouTube channel or your connected device, it's great to have you on board. Lots to talk about today. As I said to Mike, I'm going to struggle today with my language. I mean, they're just... I think we're all equally appalled. We're all equally appalled. Who can't be appalled by the awful Southport attack? And I think most of us, people who've been paying attention, are pretty darn horrified by what appears to have been a quite clear cover-up that went on last summer, labelling of everybody as far right, who's apparently passing disinformation and misinformation online. And now we're getting in more information after that guilty plea from Axel Rudabakana to the killing of 3 children and the attempted murder of 8 others and 2 adults, and all of the other charges as well. And the solution the government has come up with is, I mean, it's brilliant. We're going to change the definition of terrorism. Yeah, brilliant. And we're going to bring in 2-factor authentication that someone is 18, so a 17-year-old can't buy a knife. That is literally their solution to the problem. The facts are, Al-Rukabana admitted to carrying a knife on 10 occasions, had been caught with a knife at school before, was he expelled for that? The fact that he bought a knife on Amazon at the age of 17, it's a disgrace, according to Vecchio. It's just absolute disgrace. Well, given that he turned 18 just 9 days after the horrific murders that he committed, he could have just waited a few more days. We could have just seen the same attack a few days later. Is that really the solution to the problem? Is this not the main issue with this government? They will always, always, always look for any answers that aren't the real answers. They will always treat to blame anyone and everyone and everything they possibly can, other than the big elephant in the room. Is there an awful lot of people in this country who are mad or bad or both, and who are dangerous, who are known to the authorities? I don't care whether they've come over here on a Channel migrant boat, they've come here legally, whether they've born here, whether their parents were born here. I don't care. I don't want those people on the streets anymore. I don't want any more children killed. Is that too much to ask from my government? That's kind of pretty much basic government 101, isn't it? Don't tell us what kind of car we can drive, but then don't keep our children safe when they're at a Taylor Swift themed dance class in the summer holidays, because you aren't on top of the basic job of a government. Protect our borders, number one. Number two, law and order in this country. It's just not too much to ask. Yes, people will slip through. There will be lone people. There will be crimes. There will be terrorist attacks. There will be mad, bad and criminals. I get that. But when someone is known to you, when the social workers won't go to his house and he's been expelled from school because they need to have police with them by their side, is that not a clue? When his parents are so desperate they don't want him to go back to his old school on the final day of school because they're worried he's going to attack people like he did the last time, and they managed to persuade the taxi driver not to take him, do you not think that would be a time to act? We have got to get a grip. We have got to get a grip in this country. There is just far too much concern for people's rights, concern about people. We're constantly told that, we have to do this or that online or wherever to keep people safe. But none of the stuff that will actually keep people safe is done. So stopping a 17 and almost 18-year-old from buying a knife, or redesignating terrorism as involving young loners and incels and losers on the internet in their bedrooms, is not going to prevent another massacre of our children. It's just not. You have to take those people out of society. It is just that simple. And that's the one thing you won't do. But my God, if he'd written a hurty tweet or misgendered somebody, well, they'd have dealt with it then, wouldn't they? Well, that's what I have to say. I'm quite angry. I'm sure you're pretty angry as well about what we've been told in the last couple of days. And I do want to hear from you. We're going to be talking about all of this today. Al-Rukabana admitting to carrying a knife over 10 times before those awful murders, still able to buy a blade from Amazon to use in the Southport attack last July. Home Secretary said, as I said, it was a total disgrace that the 17-year-old with a violent conviction already was able to order the knife online. She's going to bring in two-factor authentication. I mean, deep sighs, everybody. Massive question still over whether was there a cover-up, or was the Prime Minister able to tell us an awful lot more, the police and the CPS, about Al-Rukabana and his background before he went to trial, before we had his guilty plea? The answer to that is quite simply yes. And we're also going to be talking, as Mike was just now, about the Chancellor Rachel Reeves flying to Davos amid new warnings of a flattening UK economy, concern over the death spiral from investors. This, by the way, as America is about to boom. We're going to be talking particularly about the energy policy later in the show. All that coming up. Delighted to say I've got Claire Pearsall here, former Conservative Special Advisor in the Home Office, no less, joining us. I'm going to take a moment. Breathe. I don't know. Apparently, it doesn't feel the same way about this stuff. I really don't. Look, you've got a teenage son. You need to be worried about this stuff. Boys actually are more at risk than girls on the streets now from these lunatics. Only this morning we've learnt a 14-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of murdering a 12-year-old boy in Birmingham in broad daylight yesterday. This stuff is not normal. No. This is not normal. It must not be normal. We must not normalise it. It can't just be a news in brief. Stuff is going on. Is the answer, as our brilliant Home Secretary has now announced, two-factor authentication to buy a knife online to prove that you're not under 18?
No, of course it's not the answer. I don't think anybody thinks it's the answer. It's utterly ridiculous that you can blame an online retailer for the problems that were elsewhere.
You know what we need? We need ID. That's what we need. We need personal ID. It always comes down to that. Digital ID.
I mean, I bought an electric bread knife for my husband. I'm a romantic, for his birthday last year.
Valentine's, yeah.
And I bought it from Amazon, and I had to show some ID at the door when the Amazon driver delivered. Now, my Amazon account and my ID are in two different names. Didn't spot that at all.
But he did look at you and think, do you look like you're about to go on an iPhone page?
Yeah,
I'm
I
going to
really
guess
didn't.
not.
I
don't think they'd give it to me, but, you know.
I obviously looked
John
pretty
Lewis
good.
won't let you buy them online. I'm buying a whole load of kitchen stuff. I mean, they've got my details. I'm registered. And even if it's OK, I'll collect it in store. Like, no.
And you can't do it. But then I could buy quite the danger bread knife that we have at home. I can buy that online.
Until very recently, I think you could buy a large machete as long as it didn't have something written on it. I mean, that's how mad this is.
But we've been through this before with knife crime crackdowns.
Yep.
June, July, September. That's just from the Labour government themselves.
Well, that's why all the knives have gone from our streets. Didn't you notice? Don't you feel so much safer?
No, I'm just missed that moment.
Look, I mean, they announce these things, so I assume they work. Yeah. What about the redefinition of terrorism? Possibly they're looking at that.
Doesn't need to be looked at again, does it? Terrorism, the act of terrorism hasn't changed. It really hasn't. Terrorism itself hasn't changed.
I mean, terrorism and terrorising, these girls were terrorised.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's not an act of terrorism. Does it matter if he doesn't have, in fact, Sarita Khan apparently did not have any particular one ideology? There's a rise of the incels, the sort of sad losers who can't get a girlfriend who decide that. Well, they're motivated by misogyny. They hate women. Women are all their problems. The Andrew Tates type people. And you've got the Al Qaeda people. You've got the far right people. You've got all of those people, and then you've got this guy. He had an Al Qaeda manual. He had recipe to make ricin and had made some ricin, a poison used as a terror weapon, but not necessarily having any specific ideology other than just hate.
Yes.
Does it matter?
No, it doesn't. I think what matters.
Label we put on it?
No, it doesn't. But it matters what is done about it. And I think that prevent has never really been fit for purpose. It hasn't achieved what it was set out to achieve, and the people that are being referred into it then just get lost in a black hole. You don't need to redefine what terrorism is. What you actually need to do is maybe extend what is considered to be a threat, fixated on violence, for example, like this character has been. Then you need to look at how you actually deal with those things. Yeah. But the act of terror itself is still the same.
Exactly, and a lot of it comes down to resources, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, we've had numerous terror attacks, actual terror attacks inspired by terrorist ideology. Largely, by the way, let's all stop the nonsense. Largely in this country, it is Islamist. Yeah. America, it's far right. In here, it's Islamist is our main issue in terms of mass deaths. And lots of these people, again, they've been followed, they've been known, they've been investigated. There aren't enough resources to follow all sort of 30,000 people that could possibly commit an attack tomorrow, so they're not followed. It's a numbers game. Well, it doesn't. Let's stop messing about with these sort of definitions. It is extraordinary, I think. The Prime Minister, though, still standing by this idea that he was, unable, hand-wringing press conference yesterday. I don't think it's done him much favours at all. I mean, it really did not pass muster with our audience at all yesterday, and judging by the front pages, it didn't either. But this idea that he would have liked to pass on more message about the suspect and the killing in Southport, but he was not allowed to. It would have prejudiced the trial. That would have been an awful thing. We've now the Merseyside police saying, we were basically gagged by the CPS. The CPS, and of course, no. Crown Prosecution Service, would obviously make statements about this, and everyone wanted to be very careful. But the rules seem to have changed. I want to just hold up a picture here. This is the Sun newspaper from a good few years ago, 2016. Nazi mania of Joe killer. This is about about Thomas Mayer, the man who murdered Joe Cox at Labour MP in the middle of the EU referendum campaign. Nazi mania of Joe Killer. It details at great length his secret hoard of Nazi memorabilia, pretty much every book he's ever bought online. Talked about him having a history of mental health, all of that. Now, you'd think, given that she was sadly shot and stabbed, horrific murder on June the 16th, this obviously was a front page from November when the trial happened. Nope. June the 18th.
Yeah.
2 days later. By the way, it wasn't just the Sun. The Mail did stuff like that. It covered this. The Guardian, other newspapers as well. Go back to 2017, Parsons Green tube attack. The London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, confirmed in 2017 that it was a terror incident, on the day. Used the word terror. Again, not allowed to use the word terror, apparently, because, you don't want to prejudice the trial this time around. Finsbury Park Mosque in 2017, Darren Osborne, that was classed as a terror attack within hours before he was even charged by the authorities. And guess who tweeted about it, calling it a terrorist attack?
Go on.
Keir Starmer.
No.
Keir Starmer, a shadow Brexit secretary. And the thing is, the rules seem to be different depending on who the suspect is. The rules seem to have changed. There is no reason why this information couldn't have been given out, and why we had that vacuum of information that was then filled by, yes, far-right degenerates trying to stir stuff up. And we know a lot of that started abroad. There were lots of people trying to stir stuff up, Russia, China, around everywhere. And that was allowed to happen. I mean, this is just a level of abject incompetence. And as always, they just blame everybody else.
Well, they are, and you'll know better than most about contempt. You've covered enough stories in your time.
I do have contempt, yes.
You do have contempt, but you've covered enough stories in your time to know what you can and can't broadcast. So why is it so different? I had to tweet and issued a warning the morning of the trial to say, please, don't derail this trial. Don't tweet stuff like, he's obviously guilty. Yeah, you can't say that publicly. Exactly, but why couldn't we know of those details? I mean, the Prime Minister would have known about the evidence of ricin being found and the training manual. He would have known that immediately.
The ricin was confirmed in early August. They found that on day one.
Yes, yeah, and the Prime Minister would have known. So to say that he only found out later doesn't ring true to me.
Charges not brought to the end of October.
Yeah, but I don't see how any of this would have prejudiced anything going on.
Yeah, exactly.
How?
Well, if you're prejudicing by the fact that these charges have been brought, then won't that prejudice the jury?
Precisely.
None of it adds up. It just simply doesn't add up, and it is, again, they think we're stupid. They think we're nasty and horrible and bigoted and racist.
That's more like
and they think we're stupid. That's a bad combination for democratically elected politicians.
Yeah, sure.
You really shouldn't despise. You shouldn't despise the people that you represent. The biggest problem in this country is not being worried about being in contempt of court. I very much strongly endorse those laws, those rules that mean that we can have a fair trial. I don't like the American laws where you can go, he's guilty on it. I don't like that. I think it's the system, and I think it's a system that works. It's been abused in this case. But the problem is not contempt of court in this country. The problem is contempt of politicians for their voters. The contempt that this government, and I think the CPS, and I think senior police officers hold for us, the general public. Yeah. I think that's the issue.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I mean, how are we ever going to believe a word that is said about any other crime that happens? Because everyone's going to be looking for what is being covered up at the meantime.
And how many times in cases, and we know in Britain and across Europe as well, have we been told within hours of an attack and someone being arrested, he's got long-standing mental health problems. It's always a mental health problem. Now, I'm kind of the view that if you're really, really into, Al-Qaeda or ISIS or any other mad Islamist group, and you're committing a terror attack, I think you are mad. I think it is a form of madness, but you can still be bad as well, but there we are. Let's talk about something completely different. Donald Trump, after his inauguration, the ongoing events, he attended an event, a church service, an interfaith church service in Washington with his entire family sitting in the front row with J.D. Vance, his vice president, and both of their wives and daughters and sons behind. And they basically got a lecture from a woke preacher. Let's have a little watch and a listen to what she had to say. And if you are watching on YouTube or your connected device, do take a look at the faces of Trump, Vance and the families while this woman is speaking.
In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families. Some who fear for their lives.
Utterly bizarre thing to say. And again, these interfaith things are not supposed to be political. The one time you're not supposed to be political. She talked about how young, trans, gay and lesbian people, Donald Trump has made announcements in his executive orders on trans, yeah. I mean, you always have this whole thing, don't you, about, you're saying you're denying our existence. No, you exist, but you're a man or a woman. Soz, dye your hair blue, do whatever you want once you're an adult. You can cut off your bits if you're an adult. I think you're crazy to do so, but it's your body, do what you want. If you're a kid, I've got a different view. But he's not said anything or done anything about gays or lesbians. And you could argue, actually, what this Right Reverend Marion Edgar Bude has said, the Bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Washington, has said, trans ideology is very much homophobic. It's taking young, possibly gay boys and girls and telling them, you don't worry, you're not gay, born in the wrong body, and telling them to cut off their breasts and their penises. Their testicles. I'm sorry, this is the most homophobic policy ever. Why are they in fear of their lives? But it was so inappropriate, this, wasn't it?
I think it was. To have a service to talk about respect of individuals, about freedom of speech, what you like, but don't make it about transgender children. They're not transgender.
But also this idea that you're not respecting people. If you came in here, if you say to me, I'm a coffee mug, and I'm going, well, you're not, you're a woman.
Yeah.
But am I disrespecting you when I go, well, I'm sorry, I'm not going to call you a coffee mug?
No.
Because I think that's stupid and it's a lie. I'm not going to be forced to lie.
Yeah.
Respect also involves respecting people's right to use their own language and to not be forced to lie.
Yeah, absolutely. Respect works all ways. You can respect somebody. You don't have to agree with them, but you can say, OK, but I'm not going to buy into it and I'm not going to propagate the lies that you're telling. For a church sermon, I found it very, very strange.
Yeah, also.
The faces in the
also,
congregation.
most of these churches, you don't have a very good record on looking after children.
No.
If I were you, I'd zip it. But great response from Donald Trump and Lady Vance. Just like, it was boring. It was a really boring service. And, it was.
They got through it.
Again, I'm surprised she didn't have blue hair, to be fair, but there we are. Also, doing the rounds, must talk about this before we go to a break. Elon Musk, one of the many addresses. He's quite an uncomfortable watch, isn't he, when he's speaking? It's all kind of, he's on the spectrum. That's why he's brilliant. We know that. He's quite got strange mannerisms. He's been accused of doing a Nazi salute. And anyone saying it wasn't a Nazi salute is being told, oh, well, you're a Nazi sympathiser. Look at you. I'm getting all of that. Now, I have lots of admiration for Elon Musk. I've got some big question marks about some of the European far-right parties. I'm not talking about right-wing parties. I'm talking about some far-right parties that he is supporting. But I can see people as a whole. I don't have to agree with them on every single thing. I want to play, again, have a look at this. You can be able to hear it as well if you're just on audio. Elon Musk apparently giving a Nazi salute.
Thank you. My heart goes out to you.
Now, if you're just listening, you won't be able to see that, obviously. Most of you, I know, are listening rather than watching. He touches his heart, very sort of big, strong mannerism. He touches his heart, and then he throws his hand. Oh, I'm now going to have a meme of me doing a Hitler salute now, aren't I? But he touches his heart, and he goes, and it's a very forceful. Now, quite clearly, I've told you this is like a Roman salute, the heart, but it's quite clearly, it's like my heart to you.
Yeah.
There's not a shadow of a doubt in my mind that this was a Nazi salute. No. In no way whatsoever. The left online have lost their frigging minds about this.
Yeah.
Do you think they actually believe it? Because they say, oh yes, this is definitely a Nazi salute, and anyone defending him is defending a Nazi. But at the same time, lots of people are putting out pictures of every presidential candidate and president on the left and Democrats doing a similar thing with their arm and videos. AOC, who's definitely called this the most left wing, apart from Kamala Harris, senator. And she's repeatedly doing this.
Yeah.
No, it's fine when she does it, but not when he does it. Do you think they actually believe it when they make these claims?
I think they do. I think they really believe that he is, I don't know, Hitler reincarnated in their minds. Because they don't agree with him, because they don't agree with Donald Trump, they think that they're evil and therefore they can just put them down to sort of, Nazi salutes.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous. If you watch Elon Musk wherever he goes, he bounces.
Yeah.
He's one of those irritating people that can't sit still, can't stand still, waves his arms around. Yes, he does get stuff done, but that's what he's like. And no, I don't think it was a Nazi salute. I think they need to just wind their necks in.
I don't think it was. I know it wasn't.
Yeah, they need to wind their necks in.
But also, there's going to be plenty of things to criticise the Trump regime for. Legitimate things. Don't make stuff up. It just undermines everything you say. I mean, it's just embarrassing. And it's so dishonest. And, and these are the same people who shout about misinformation, disinformation online and how we need to stop it. You're literally putting out lies. And you're either stupid or you're a liar. Either way. Again, zip it. I want to put... I forgot to put the social question out to you, but hey, already got loads and loads of calls in, understandably. Government wants new restrictions to limit the sale of knives to under 18s in the wake of the Southport attack. That's their first solution for an inquiry that will take... It'll take 2 years to do an inquiry into one young man and his killer obsession. I mean, really, you could probably do it in a month if you wanted to. I want to know, what is your reaction? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Don't do a Hitler salute while you do it. And don't forget, calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. If you'd like to give your thoughts on the claims of a Elon Musk Nazi salute, love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Oh, yeah, and the nagging bishop as well. Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
Simple, basic things like there's only two genders. Hallelujah. Drill, baby, drill. If only Ed Miliband could get aboard that agenda and use the liquid gold we have in the North Sea. And to say that there was a national emergency on the border, using the troops to defend their southern border, to throw everything at it to make sure that people in this country are safe. If Keir Starmer's got anything about him, he would roll out the red carpet to Donald J. Trump with a state visit, allow him to address Parliament, allow him to have a state banquet, and allow him to come to this country and actually pull us in the right direction.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 10:28 is the time. Claire Pearsall's still with me as well. Let's get straight to the phone lines, though. 0344 499 1000, asking about what the government is doing to deal with, prospects from the Southport attack. And apparently, if you've got two-factor authentication on someone buying a knife under the age of 18, job done. I know. Just try not to swear on air if you are calling, please. Let's talk to David, who is in Exeter. Hi, David.
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning.
You're hitting the nail on the head with this, as if our security systems and services don't have enough of a problem because of the direction and the way the systems, and I mean politically directed, to then go to actually what the systems are being capable of seeing and finding and flagging.
Yeah.
So even in this instance, where you have a terrorist in front of them, they can't see it. But I
don't even care whether he is labelled a terrorist or not. And they're talking about the redefinition. I don't care. I mean, I don't want killers on the streets.
Criminal, correct.
Is that too much to ask?
It's not. But what we're seeing is, I think probably the context is everything with this where Starmer is concerned. And this is obviously Commander-in-Chief, in effect. Harry Cole did a lovely expose yesterday where he was highlighting a couple of very barbaric killers that Starmer represented pro bono. And this is Harry Cole's report. Yeah. So you've got to think of the mindset here of, this is the sort of start point. But a couple of years ago, I interviewed a former director of the NSA in America.
National Security Agency, yeah.
Yeah, where we were discussing these shortcomings in our security services and systems, where effectively they're hogtied. You've got the staff there within GCHQ, etc., are literally trying to find needles in a global digital haystack. Yeah. And this is our issue, is they cannot, and they are not geared up, let alone directed, to see these sorts of randomised attacks.
I get that. That's funny. You're not going to know what someone's doing in their bedroom. I get that. Apart from the fact that when he's been reported previously, they checked what was on his computer and they knew what was on his computer, and he was obsessed with genocide and had been caught carrying a knife beforehand. So even when people are flagged up into the system, they don't do anything or enough about it. That's my issue. David, time's against us. I'm going to move on, but please do call in again. Lots of really good points there. Kevin is on the line. He's in Portsmouth. Hello, Kevin.
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning.
I'm just finishing up a book called Broken and Betrayed by Jane Senior. She was a youth worker in Rotherham. Mm-hmm. She identified names, dates, places, times, car registration numbers, the lot. Yeah. Child abuse on an industrial scale, highly organised, in the mid-90s. Yeah. This is nothing new. So what has happened since? Well, the whole of Rotherham Council had to resign, and they were taken over by commissioners. David Cameron, Jane Senior went down and met David Cameron. There's the Alexis J report. There's another report by another lady whose name I simply can't recall. And what has actually happened across all these pretty much exclusively Labour councils? Nothing.
Yeah. So you're saying this is exactly the same as with Southport, just failure for any action.
Exactly the same as Southport. Saying you can't buy a knife online without flashing a driving licence and sending us a picture. As you rightly pointed out, you go and nick it from your mum's knife block.
Yeah. I mean,
it's completely crackers, and it's the uni party. I'm actually, oddly enough, not blaming just Labour.
No, I'm with you all the way.
Uni party.
I do absolutely agree with you on that. Yeah.
Equally useless, equally woke, and I was listening to Lord Carlisle talking to Mike Graham this morning, which was absolutely hysterical because Mike absolutely shredded him, and it was brilliant. But the bloke's on another planet. He's in another solar system.
Yeah, that is the worry. I don't know what it is. They're experts, but they don't seem to, funnily enough, get it. But there we are. Thank you very much for that call, Kevin. I really appreciate that. 10:33 is the time. Up next, we're going to talk to Conservative MP Andrew Rossendale in the studio about all of this. And has it just been Labour failings or has it been Tory failings? Hey, they were in charge for 14 years. And what should happen now? This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:35 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Claire Pissell, former Conservative Special Advisor, is still with me in the studio. I'd love to get your thoughts on what my next guest has to say. We've been joined by Conservative MP Andrew Rossendale. Very, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Wish we were talking under happier circumstances, but obviously so much in the news at the moment is the wake of that guilty plea from Axel Rudabakana to the Southport attacks that left 3 girls dead, another 8 severely injured in the knife attack, and 2 adults as well. Just first of all, we hear from the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, that it is a disgrace that Axel Rudabakana was able to buy a knife. He already had a knife conviction, that he carried a knife on 10 occasions. He bought one at the age of 17 from Amazon. She wants to introduce 2-factor authentications, ID, to prevent anyone under 18 buying a knife. Of course, I mean, I think it was 9 days later he would have been 18, so could have just delayed his massacre under those laws. What do you make of the government's response so far?
Well, I think the government's whole handling of the affair has been absolutely atrocious from day one. From my point of view, it looks to me like they have been covering up right from the start. Now, the latest discussion about the knives being bought on Amazon, yes, they can bring in all kinds of new rules and restrictions about this, and no one's going to object to that. But look, if you've got someone with evil intentions, they will get a knife regardless. Yeah. As you just said, 2 days later, exactly. So the idea that bringing in restrictions like that is going to solve the problem, it won't. If you're a criminal or you want to kill someone, you'll find a way of doing it. So banning things isn't necessarily always a straightforward answer to a problem. What I do think is that there is problems in society, and we need to tackle these issues at the very start. That
seems to always be the thing that people don't want to do. And your own party, when it was in government, I felt did exactly the same. There'll be sort of attempts at identifying issues. Now, a lot of the misinformation, or the lies that were going around online in the immediate wake of the Southport attack was that this was an illegal migrant. He'd arrived on a boat, and then we were told, no, he was from boarding Cardiff. He wasn't a migrant. Now, of course, again, it was certainly slightly disingenuous. He was the son of migrants. But yes, born in Britain. But we also know there have clearly some issues in terms of his parents were from Rwanda. His father is believed, it's claimed that he fought on one side in a horrific war in Rwanda that left huge numbers of people dead. That as a child, he was obsessed with murder, with genocide, with horrific beheadings and the like. And clearly, he was expelled from school. There was violence. There were concerns in the family. And he was referred to Prevent 3 times, and yet nothing enough was done. But social workers wouldn't enter his house without a police officer present, but we were quite happy to have him still wandering the streets if and when he chose. What is the solution? Is it redefining terrorism, as has been suggested by the Prime Minister in his announcement at Downing Street? Is it, obviously not just these knife laws? What is the answer?
Well, the answer certainly isn't to walk on eggshells about these issues anymore. We have to be very clear. The British people have had enough. They've had enough of violence on our streets. In London, we see that all the time. They're fed up of people coming into our country that shouldn't be here, who then take part in criminal activity and indeed terrorism. They want a government that's actually going to seriously protect the security of the British people. So that has to be a party in power that is not going to walk on eggshells
anymore. You were
anymore.
pretty critical of the last Conservative government.
I'm not here representing the last Conservative government. I wasn't part of the last Conservative government. We had 14 years to do a lot of things, and we failed to do things that we should have done. And that's why we lost, and that's why we're out of power. If we want to regain power, we've got to win back trust. We won't do that unless we tackle these issues head on.
And what does tackling these issues head on mean?
Right, so look at what Mr. Trump is now doing in the United States. He's getting rid of this diversity and inclusion nonsense, and he wants the public sector to get on and do a proper job for the country.
Never catch on here.
Well, it needs to, because we're sick of it. We're all fed up with it, and I think the same thing in this country. The police need to be police again and not social workers and not ticking PC boxes. We're sick of that culture. It has to end. So we need more money spent on security and defence and border control and local policing. And what I think we need to do is to take money directly out of the foreign aid budget and put it directly into national security
the money
and
is there.
defence.
I mean,
the money's there, but we just need to reallocate it.
That's one of the interesting things about the discussions going on in the last 24 hours about, you know, redefining an act from somebody who's got a specific ideology, as it would appear is the case with Axel Rudolph, other than just hatred and wanting to kill, that can still be classed as terrorism. But the point is, it's about the resources you have anyway, because again and again we've had terror attack. I can't think of a single actual designated terror attack that we've had in this country where someone has either killed a large number of people or attempted to, where they haven't been known to the authorities. Often, you know, often migrants, children of migrants, British-born people who have got, you know, a long history of major concerns from the authorities, and nothing is done. So there's no point sort of identifying people unless you're actually going to do something about it. And we don't have the resources to do something about 30,000 people.
Look, Julia, the first priority of any government is to protect the people of this country. That's the first duty of our government. They're failing to do that. The system is failing. Now, I've been speaking to Lady Amos. I saw Julia Amos.
This is the widow of David Amos, the MP stabbed to death.
David was a close friend of mine, and we desperately miss him. The dreadful circumstances of what happened. Julia Amos and Katie, who's been on GB News, if I can mention GB News here today.
If you feel the need to.
She was just on there just before I came. I was watching her interview. No one's listening to her. Prevent has failed, absolutely failed. There needs to be a reopening of that inquiry. But my general point is, no one has much confidence in this anymore, and there needs to be radical change of attitude and a system that actually works to protect the British people.
And you said at the beginning of our conversation you think there has been a cover-up ongoing. One of the things I found bizarre, and I was looking at the going back to front page news and newspaper stories in the wake of a number of major attacks that we've seen, and how differently they've been covered by politicians and by the media. For instance, Joe Cox, the horrific killing of Labour MP Joe Cox. Thomas Mayer, the man who's convicted of shooting and stabbing her in June 2016, this awful attack. I mean, the attack took place on the 16th of June. He was not convicted until November. 2 days after this horrific murder, all over the front pages, The Sun, Guardian, Mail, others were reporting that he was a neo-Nazi, that Nazi memorabilia had been found in his home. The Sun were listing, you know, about sort of 10 of the books that he'd ordered online, talking about his mental health. This was all allowed. There was no impact on the ability to have a fair trial. No one at the time complained. No politician at the time complained. In terms of designating an attack, a terror attack, Parsons Green tube bomb in 2017, the London Mayor Sadiq Khan, he confirmed within hours that this was a terror incident. Finsbury Park Mosque attack in 2017 was referred to as a terrorist attack within hours. That was days before the man who committed that attack, Darren Osborne, was even charged. Keir Starmer himself, then an opposition MP, he tweeted referring to this as a terror attack. And now we're told, but we couldn't have called this a terror attack. We couldn't give out any details about Axel Rubicana because that would have prejudiced a trial. That vacuum of knowledge, do you believe that was a deliberate cover-up, or was it just abject incompetence?
I don't know, Julia. All I know is that there's an inconsistency in how this has been dealt with compared to the cases you've mentioned. And the fear is that there were those in control of the situation that decided for politically correct reasons not to say anything.
And what were those politically correct reasons?
Who knows? I'm not part of that decision-making process. But quite clearly they knew all this.
Basically, he's black, he's a son of migrants, people are going to riot on the streets, let's not tell them that. Do you think that's what they thought?
It looks like it's me. The Prime Minister...
Were they right, though?
No, of course they're not right. I think that if...
We did have riots on the streets.
As long as you're not prejudicing the case... Of course you can't do that, but the basic information about someone that's just committed an act of terrorism, why should that be kept secret from the British people? The British people have a right to know. The Prime Minister knew. He said that himself. Why is this being pushed under the carpet only to come out months later?
Yeah, I mean, and again, the Rice-In, the terror manual...
Of course.
Again,
but they seem to know that from the beginning.
They knew that within a couple of days.
So why is that secret?
And how would it prejudice the trial?
Precisely.
Not in October, but would in... Do you believe that fundamentally the CPS, the police, senior figures in the police, maybe not rank-and-file police officers, who I think are on our side, certainly the Prime Minister and the government, do you think they don't trust the British people?
I don't know. I just feel it's sad that my constituents feel so frustrated about the way things are going in this country. They're angry, they're dismayed at the lack of action by the authorities to deal with crime in our country, to protect the British people. We have wonderful security services, and frankly, without them, we'd be in serious trouble.
And we don't know of the many times when we've been saved from tax.
We don't. So, but I honestly believe that our priority has to be, first and foremost, to protect the British people. And I think that a lot more resources need to go into this, and we need to be tougher. We need to deport those fast who are here illegally and those who are committing crimes. We seem to be afraid to do anything apart from worry about world opinion. We're worried about that, but we're not worried about what the safety and security of the British people as much as we should.
Andrew Rossendale, thank you very much indeed. Conservative MP Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Special Advisor. You did serve in government. What did you make of what Andrew had to say?
Some really valid points, especially around security and defence spending, which I think is going to be cut quite substantially by the Labour government, and we need to spend more on that. The security services cannot cope with what they've got at the moment. The amount of people that they need to be watching, the amount of people they should be watching, and the resources they have just don't match up. So I think you're absolutely spot on.
Yeah, indeed. Claire, thank you very much. Big thank you to Andrew Rossendale. Just some breaking news for you. Kyle Clifford has pleaded guilty to the murders of Carol Hunt. You remember, she's the wife of the BBC racing commentator John Hunt. And their daughters Louise and Hannah, and also to 2 counts of possession of an offensive weapon. You remember this absolutely horrific case of the Bushy crossbow killer. Carl Clifford has pleaded guilty to the murders of Carol Hunt and her daughters Louise and Hannah. He has pleaded not guilty to the rape of Louise Hunt. I think that's a development in the case I was not aware of until this point, but that's the Bushy crossbow killer case. We'll bring you up to date on any developments there coming up soon. Right now we'll take a quick break. 10:47 is the time. This is Talk.
I've been speaking to, they're coming up going like, oh my God, in your country, people are put in prison for social media posts. Oh my God, in your country, booming gangs. Oh my God, your economy. Oh my God, your mad communist prime minister. The Americans want us to be strong. They want to see a government in the United Kingdom that echoes and reflects what they've now got. And I think that actually the tide's going to turn. You know, Nigel is adored over here, absolutely hero worshipped. And I think our general election, albeit quite far away, I think it could really deliver similar results.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Just that breaking news regarding the Bushy crossbow killer. This, of course, took place in July last year, and you'll remember it's the wife and two daughters of racing commentator John Hunt, killed in a horrific crossbow attack. Carl Clifford, the man accused, has pleaded guilty to 3 counts of murder at Cambridge Crown Court. He denied 1 count of rape. We'll bring you more details on that in the news at 11 o'clock. Let's just go right now to, I suppose, handing over to Davos to talk about the rich and the powerful over on the ski slopes at Davos for the World Economic Forum, joined by Rachel from Accounts. Rachel Reeves has turned up there to give her tuppence worth, although, again, interestingly, not doing big keynote speeches. I wonder why. Let's talk to Maxwell Marlowe, who's Director of Research at the Adam Smith Institute, and joins us now. A very good morning to you, Maxwell.
Good morning, Julia. How are you?
Very well. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. There's lots to talk about Rachel Reeves being in Davos, not playing a big role. When she was Shadow Chancellor, she was invited to do a keynote speech. Apparently she was invited but turned one down, I am told. But she's arriving at Davos facing, numerous battles back at home in terms of, rising unemployment, zero growth, battles over investment. Is there any point her being there?
I think so. There's some really big wins from the government yesterday. We saw some good announcements when it comes to airport expansion, whether that's Heathrow, Luton, Gatwick. Also some new news about removing blockages in the planning system. And I think speaking to lots of businesses and investors, as we do at the Adam Smith Institute, we find that actually these are the big constraints holding back investment and growth in the UK. So that's firstly good news for her, and she can go and talk about that. The other big thing is political stability. And she's been really clear to go out to Davos and say, look, if you're a big business, you've got lots of money to spend, the UK is a great place to put it because we're not going to be changing governments just as the Tories did a few years ago. So I think it's really important to remember why she is there courting big business. But that doesn't excuse her from coming back and setting out the big challenges ahead facing the country. Well,
indeed. And you've got to wonder about why anyone would want to come and invest in this country when our energy prices are among the highest in the world. I mean, I imagine one invested in Germany either. And you've got America facing this boom. AI, they're putting in huge amounts of money in AI. AI, we're told, is the big future. She wants to put, $500 billion or something investment into AI. Well, you can't have AI en masse in this country because energy prices are too high. For industry, I think it's 5 times higher than they are in America. I mean, this is all for the birds, this stuff, isn't it?
Some of it is, but we do struggle to build data centres in the UK. A lot of that is down to energy emergency. He said open the taps, and that could be good for Britain. We get most of our imported energy from the US through liquid natural gas, and the Americans are the world leaders in doing that. So
that's probably better if we got it from our own fracking or our own drilling in the North Sea, wouldn't it? I mean, that's what Norway does. That they seem to do quite well at doing that. You mentioned planning's a big issue, and that comes up with the airport expansion. It is absolutely fascinating, her talking about the 3rd runway at Heathrow, Gatwick 2nd runway, and expanding at Luton as well. Now, I'm all in favour of all of this, and I'll probably in my garden hear some of the noise, but we know how important this is. You look at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam; they've got 6 runways, for goodness sake. China builds that many new runways every week, virtually. It is extraordinary how much being even a hub airport, even those people don't set foot out of an airport, how crucial that is for business expansion, for investment. And it's something that's difficult to grasp, but it really, really does make a difference. Thing is, most of the cabinet, including people like Keir Starmer said climate was a far bigger issue than airport expansion at the last vote, voted against airport expansion in the 3rd runway. Oh, he also, by the way, voted against HS2, but on different grounds. So he doesn't want people to get on a train. You're not allowed to drive or get on a train or go on an aeroplane. But realistically, I mean, Ed Miliband, who's a complete net zero, obsessive and fanatic, he and many other members of the front bench of the Labour Party are going to be hugely opposed to this, as is every environmental group, as is the Climate Change Committee. There could easily be legal challenges in the courts under the net zero legislation, which would stop these things from going ahead.
That is a possibility, but legislation already exists for the government to overrule a lot of these ahead of time. So they're called special development orders and development orders. It's something we've looked at last year with a couple of research publications we put out. The Chancellor, well, Keir Starmer, the Chancellor, and Angela Rayner have the power to just railroad through and get this stuff sorted. Let's remember, the third runway at Heathrow would already have been built if David Cameron didn't stop it, right? So, this anti-growth coalition we heard so much about under Liz Truss, they were in both parties, but it's going to be a huge, big first test to see if Rachel Reeves means what she says on growth. And if she can get through her colleagues, I think she can, and I hope she will, because Britain needs it now more than ever before. Just finally, with the sort of push for growth, America first, make America great again stuff we're hearing from America, will that, that will benefit America, if they can just get things moving and cheaper, more plentiful energy, that is how you achieve growth, the tech world and the like. Is that going to make it harder for us to do well here in Britain, or if America is booming as such a vital economy in the world, will that help us? Are we going to be doing better or worse if Trump does actually achieve economic growth at the speed he wants to in America? It all comes down to tariffs, and something that Trump has been really clear about. He wants a free trade deal with the UK, so we can get a carve out from that, and that provides us with a really good opportunity to basically grow, around the Americans, not really with them, but around them, and hopefully provide some really good examples as to what we could do to get this country growing again, something we haven't really seen since 2008. And I think that is such a huge alert should be going off, across Whitehall. If the Americans, they're already 40% richer per capita than we are. If the Americans get to 60, even 100% in the next 8 years, we're going to have to turn around and go, why on earth didn't we do what we were doing? They've also got a lot of, again, that is massively distorted, that figure. People have been spouting a lot about that figure. It's massively distorted by the fact there are some unbelievably super rich people. They've got quite a lot of those multi-billionaires in America, which we don't have as many of. And actually, the average American, it's not wealth. It's GDP per capita. GDP per capita. I know, but the average American for the last 20 years has barely seen any improvement in their standard of living. So that wealth is not being shared out in America. I think people need to remember that. Maxwell Marlowe from the Anna Smith Institute. Great to talk to you. I hope you join us again on the show. Claire Pearsall. Rachel from accounts in Davos, no one seems to care what Rachel thinks. You're not going to be looking to her for inspiration, are you? No, you're really not. I actually slightly got excited when there was airport expansion back on the cards again. It was like, oh my, this is a good idea. This is something I can agree with. And it upsets all the right people. Sadiq Khan, Ed Miliband, what's not to like? Exactly. I think they need to do that to Gatwick as well, the airport I use the most, because it would make everything so much better. But with Gatwick, they just want to use an emergency runway and just use that as a regular runway. It's not difficult. It really isn't. We are one of the London, I believe, is the greatest city in the world, certainly the greatest capital city in the world. And I've been to a lot of them. The idea that we've got a lot of airports. Yeah. We need major hub airports. And frankly, if you live near Heathrow or Gatwick now, you've chosen to do that. Yeah, they've been there a long time. Yeah, I hear the aeroplanes coming over. We're on the stacking route for Gatwick. Heathrow. Yeah. Fine. It just means that things are moving, things are flying. People are taking business elsewhere. When people were celebrating during lockdown, isn't it lovely and quiet? You can hear the bird song. And I remember when I started seeing planes, I remember thinking, thank God we're back moving again. But there we are. Claire Pearsall, thank you very much. More on this throughout the show. We're going to be talking to Ross Clark, actually, about the boom in terms of energy policy in America and how that will affect us, and talk about airport expansion as well. Lots more coming up. Can't wait for more of your calls as well. 0344 499 1000 on the government's response to the Southport attack and what their solutions are. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Welcome back to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. You're with Talk. We're on DAB Plus Radio, on your smart speaker, and of course you can also watch on YouTube or on your connected device. I'm with you live all the way until 1, and it is absolutely fabulous to have your company. I think we've been feeling quite quite sort of angry still about what's been going on, the Southport attack, the various cover-ups, and the utterly hopeless solutions that the government has come up with in terms of how we tackle the fact that Axel Rudiger at the age of 17, just 9 days shy of his 18th birthday, was able to use a knife that he'd bought on Amazon online to kill 3 little girls and injure 8 others and 2 adults at the Southport attack. The solution from the Home Secretary is utterly brilliant. It's a total disgrace that he was able to buy this knife, and therefore she wants 2-factor authentication. I'd just love to know your response to that, because the idea that this is in any way a reasonable, viable, useful reaction to this issue is absolute madness. Bearing in mind, by the way, that a 14-year-old has been arrested today over the murder of a 12-year-old in broad daylight yesterday in Birmingham. I mean, really? I mean, so that's the solution? I mean, as if they can't go to the kitchen drawer and get a knife out, or get a mate who's 18 to buy the knife for them. It is absolutely mind-blowing. They think these are the solutions. Really not getting to the bottom of it. I want to hear from you. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000, text on 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV as well. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost 1, standard network rate message. Also going to be talking in this hour about Donald Trump having been urged to have mercy on transgender children, and weirdly also gay and lesbian children who've not been mentioned in any of his executive orders, and immigrants. She means illegal immigrants, by the way, by a woke bishop during an inauguration church service attended by the president and his family. We're going to be talking to the American author Lionel Shriver about that. We're also going to be talking, of course, more about some of the policies announced by Donald Trump, including his basically throwing away and ripping up of all net zero madness. Drill, baby, drill. How much should we have to learn from that? We'll talk about that after midday with Ross Clark. All that coming up. Delighted to say Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Government Special Advisor, is joining us still. Morning again to you.
Morning.
Lots going on, as always. Let's start once again with the madness of what's gone on with the Southport attack. Tomorrow we've got the sentencing of Axel Rudiger. We're only able to know his name within days of the attack because he was 17. We weren't supposed to know his name. We weren't supposed to know anything about him if it'd been up to the authorities, it would appear. But he was, at the age of 17, able to buy a knife on Amazon. And therefore, well, that's obviously the problem. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, announced yesterday not only there's going to be this public inquiry, which will take far too long and probably not uncover anything useful in terms of how he was able to carry out this killing and how he wasn't stopped despite being reported to prevent 3 times, being expelled from schools, violent assaults on fellow pupils in schools, carrying a knife. He's admitted to carrying a knife on 10 different occasions, looking at horrific stuff online. Now they're going to want to, let's try and censor the stuff online. Let's need 2-factor authentication and ID to buy a knife if you're under 18. He could have just waited 9 days and bought one. I mean, is this in any way a solution to the problem of whether they are terrorists or whether they are people who commit acts which terrorise? I don't think I really care what label we put on these people, that there are some mad and bad and mad or bad people on our streets or in their bedrooms looking at this stuff online, buying knives, getting them from their mum's kitchen drawer, who want to do us ill.
None of this is an answer. Well, certainly not to the problem that's in front of us, which is why somebody can be on the radar of so many different agencies and nothing was done.
Yeah.
Realistically, he needed to have been in prison because he was such a threat to society. And that is what prison is there for. It's not just for the punishment and rehabilitation of offenders, it's also for the security of the people on the streets.
Or also, perhaps some sort of mental institution, I would have thought.
Yeah.
I mean, because there were so many concerns about him.
Yeah.
The fact that his father, a week beforehand, begged a cab driver not to let him in the cab, not to take him to his school. Why? Because he thought he was going to try and do something. He had planned a massacre in the school. Yeah. They'd been looking at... If your kid was looking at the stuff this young man was looking at, I mean, come on. we'd be seeking help, right? And I don't know how much help his family did seek. They may be, you know, just as much victims in this, but not enough was done.
No, it wasn't. And there were going to be multiple agencies. The police, you've got social services, you've got education, what was done. We don't know any of that. And I as a parent, yeah, absolutely. If my child was doing that, I would be beside myself and trying to do everything I could
but also,
to protect people.
Other kids in his schools, you know, they were supposed to be at school with this killer. Okay? I mean, they're also at risk.
Yes, they are, and that's what I mean about actually should he have been somewhere away from the populace if he cannot be trusted.
You know, everyone says, oh, he was in his bedroom all the time. Well, I'm thinking, I wish he'd stayed there. Yeah. Social workers wouldn't go into his home without a police escort. What does that tell you? Oh, but it's okay for him to just leave the house any time.
But the
lack of joined up thinking. Yeah. But here's the thing: the authorities are so quick to take away our freedoms. Whenever they're, for our safety, always have, well, I'm afraid we're going to have this rule on this, and ID for this, and I mean, there's never anything that happens that the solution isn't some sort of digital ID. There is never a problem in this country that the authority, Tony Blair will be here in a minute going, we could have prevented this if we'd had digital. I mean, honestly, but they don't do anything about taking away the freedoms of the dangerous people. Even and we're not talking about Minority Report and Tom Cruise and pre-crime. We're talking about someone who's clearly a danger.
It is, and what it's going to do is just increase the burden on individuals who are going about their business, so people just living their lives who are now going to have a very complicated system in order to buy something as simple as a knife for their kitchen. But I also await the Home Office knife licence. I bet you and your knife block.
About that online.
Yeah, you and your knife block are suddenly going to have a licence. So let's all wait for
Knives are really ususeful things. I was thinking, I'm buying a load of kitchen stuff. I have to go all the way into the shop to get the knife, and it's like, I know. Can't I just get it delivered?
Then you're moving around with something that is a dangerous weapon.
Which you would have thought, I don't know. Although, frankly, I can understand a lot of people. I don't, that we talk about, penalties, people carrying a knife. I'm thinking, there'll be occasionally think, God, I'm glad I'm on the way back from the knife shop in this scenario. I mean, that's the awful thing. I mean, again, related to in terms of the violence we've got, a 14-year-old boy was arrested, can't be named obviously, at 14-year-old boy arrested on suspicion of murder after the fatal stabbing of a 12-year-old in Birmingham, broad daylight yesterday. We only know about the news today. I mean, 12-year-old and a 14-year-old, that is two lives completely and utterly ruined. You know it'd be gang related, we know it all already. We know it all already. There'll be no dads.
No.
There'll be no dads. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, how many times? And then we've also got, in the last half an hour or so, Kyle Clifford pleading guilty to the Bushy crossbow killing. You remember this from July last year. Kyle Clifford was accused of stabbing Carol Hunt to death, fatally shooting Louise and Hannah Hunt, her daughters, with a crossbow at their family home. They are the wife and daughters of the racing commentator John Hunt, who's been known to many as a Sky Sports and BBC racing commentator. He has one surviving daughter, Amy. I can't imagine what that family has gone through. It was absolutely brutal what happened to them in that home, and he was in that home for a long time as well. Yeah. He's pleaded guilty. He has pleaded not guilty to one count of rape. But I mean, again, another horrific case. And again, as we discovered, you can buy a crossbow online. Literally, you can sit there right now, go click, click, click. There you go.
Yeah, and have it delivered. Why is nobody having a look at these kind of things? Why are they available? Who needs a crossbow?
What do you need a crossbow for?
It's not something going about your daily life that you're going to require one. This is not a Western movie.
But here's the thing, where do you draw the line? Because, again, the issue is, and again, it's like the American gun law thing, guns don't kill people, people do. Yeah, but it's a good idea if people in a fit of anger don't have access to a weapon they can kill a lot of people with. Look, what people forget, I hate all the conversation about Southport when they talk about he killed three little girls. He attempted to kill about 20 girls.
Yeah.
Okay. There were, that's how many. The other girls, 8 other girls had wounds. Were stabbed in the back as they ran away. He was a psycho. It doesn't even bear thinking about the horror that those children endured, and the families of the 3 little girls who died are having to endure the worst possible thing. But those little, that's never going to leave you. That's never going to leave you or your family, and 2 adults as well. I mean, and then you've got, the cab driver, the man who tackled him, said, why didn't you pay your taxi driver? You think, what could I have done? Everyone, the amount of people this impacts, the people who saw the screaming, bloodied children running out, people are traumatised forever by this stuff, and understandably, because they're normal people. And yet we never seem to get the right end of it. Does redefining terrorism count? Does the government saying that they are going to look at what information can be given in the event of these cases, does that make a difference? Because the claims of a cover-up, we had Tory MP Andrew Rossendale, we've had Reform MPs, many people saying there was a cover-up. They did not give us full information. There was a vacuum of information about this man, and that was filled. That void was filled by the far right, and it was filled by foreign actors deliberately putting lies about online and many people are behind bars as a result after those riots.
And I think that's the problem, is that nothing moves particularly quickly in Keir Starmer's government. They're very risk-averse.
Set another inquiry up.
Set another inquiry up. Let's push it into the long arse. Let's have a think about it. Well, actually, you don't need to leave that vacuum, because it will get filled. They know that. You need to get some information out there to stop misinformation going around. So if they put information out there, we probably wouldn't have seen the level of anger that we saw last summer.
But also, it was the perception. It wasn't just that we didn't have the information. It was that they were deliberately withholding information. Yeah. And we know, and we talked about this earlier, in the case of Jo Cox, when she was horrifically murdered by Thomas Mayer in June 2016, and again, he was apprehended at the scene. Within 2 days, front page of the newspapers had all about what was found in his home, that he was a neo-Nazi, had long-term mental health history. Virtually every book he'd ever bought online, that neo-Nazi memorabilia, that was all known 2 days later. But he went to trial in November. For some reason, that wasn't considered contempt of court. That wasn't going to prejudice the trial. In the Finsbury Park mosque attack in 2017, the Parsons Green tube attack in 2017, in both cases, they were declared a terror attack instantly. The London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, talked about it being a terror incident at Parsons Green. One Keir Starmer, wonder what he's doing now. He referred to the terrorist attack, again, within hours of the Finsbury Park mosque. We knew a lot more about the killer of David Amos, the Tory MP as well. It seems to be the rules are different for different people. And I know, let's all stop pussyfooting around.
Yeah.
He was a black man. Mm-hmm. He was the son of immigrants, and he committed this horrific killing. Yep. Okay. The government knew this. They knew they had the right man straight away. He was bloodied. He was apprehended at the scene. Okay, they knew that in the storm at the time, in July and everything, that was not going to go down well, given the concerns generally in the debates over things at the time, in the public eye at the time. And they deliberately withheld that information and put out information that no, he wasn't a legal migrant. He wasn't. He was born in Cardiff. They put that information out, and they did that deliberately. Yeah. Are they not responsible also for their failures?
Yes, I think they are, because what happens when another event occurs, which it will, are we going to believe what it is they're telling us, or are we going to be looking and saying, right, you've just mentioned that it is a man, you're not mentioning where they're from. It's all this vague stuff which just feeds into people's disbelief of what's going on.
And also, we found some rice in an Al Qaeda manual, but we're just not going to mention it. Just not going to mention it until October. None of it. I'm sorry, none of it adds up. And everyone's saying, "Oh, it was the CPS." It was like, no. I'm sorry. There has been a cover up, and again, nothing excuses people going out and threatening people in an asylum hostel or throwing bricks at. No, sorry. None of that is ever justified. Some of the hate online as well. I'm glad those people are being punished. I am. Mm-hmm. But there were also a lot of people who were asking questions and who were rightly concerned about things and who I think shouldn't be behind bars. Let's also talk about happier things. Donald Trump's election. Never thought I'd be happy about Donald Trump being re-elected, but I really, really was on the day, and I still remain now. That bunch of executive orders. Look, there's some stuff I don't like. I'm not going to agree with him on everything. But wow, I loved a lot of the stuff, especially on the border, mass deportations. Why does anyone think that illegal migrants shouldn't be deported? Or they lived here for years. So what? You're living there illegally. You don't have a right to live in any country you choose. You just don't. I don't understand why people even query this. We're going to have so much footage of tearful children. It's going to be awful. Those families. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But we have border controls for a reason, or not under the Bidens. But he's also been criticised by the Usual Brigade for basically saying, oh, we're now going to recognise biological fact. There are only two genders, only two sexes. It's male and female. To the extent that even if you're on a passport, US passport, and you're travelling back to the States now, if the sex on your passport doesn't match your actual sex, you're going to have to get a new passport. I think you can allow people 6 months to renew their passport. I think would be more reasonable. But Donald Trump got a right old lecture from a woke preacher at an interfaith religious ceremony in Washington DC yesterday. I do implore you, if you are watching on YouTube or Connectify, you will actually get to see the wonderful facial expressions from Donald Trump and his family, particularly J.D. Vance as well. Have a watch and a listen of what she had to say.
In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families. Some who fear for their lives.
I mean, the faces are just glorious. If you're not seeing them, they really are a picture. Why would gay and lesbian people be fearing for their lives? Because he's not even mentioned them in any of the... I mean, there's no rules that affecting gays. But the only people gay lesbians who are affected by this are those children who are basically told the lie that you're born in the wrong body. And actually, no, you're not gay. You're not gay. What you need to do is cut off your breasts and be a boy. Oh, no, what you do, you're not gay. What you need to do is cut off your testicles and pretend you're a girl. Sorry, those children are being mutilated and drugged by a vicious, nasty, child-hating, homophobic ideology, which is what trans is. I'm thrilled with the Donald Trump on this. I think most Americans will be thrilled, certainly most parents. But why would they fear for their lives? I mean, what an extraordinary lecture to give. He said it was boring afterwards.
Yeah, I think the faces in the congregation agreed with that. And I think we've all sat through things that we weren't particularly interested in, and you had to have a face on you that looks as if you're half paying attention.
Yeah, I'm not very good at that.
I'm not. It's all written over my face that I'm not happy. But why? What was the point? Why sit there and lecture?
She was virtue signalling.
Well, that's what 15 minutes.
That's what the woke do. They work. That's the entire point. They work. That is. That, you know, I mean, this is Right Reverend Marion Edgar Bood. I mean, you know, she'll have all the correct views. She'll have all the right flags in her Twitter account. If she's probably left Twitter when Musk bought it. I mean, it's so predictable, isn't it? No, I mean, thing is, there is an element where, you know, religious figures. And we had this from, you know, our own Justin Welby, former Archbishop of Canterbury. This. I mean, I suppose it's their job to preach from the pulpit, but yeah, you really want to make sure you're on solid ground.
Well, you do, but she's now had her 15 minutes of fame. She's got her words out there.
She'll be lauded.
And it's going to change absolutely nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. I would think they've doubled down even more.
Yeah.
Can we also just have a quick clip of Elon Musk? Apparently giving a Nazi salute at a rally when he's addressing the Trump faithful. This has been derided by pretty much the entire left on the internet, who are, in my view, completely pretending, either to us or themselves, or maybe both, that they think he did a Hitler salute. I mean, if you're just listening, you can't see this, but he's basically puts his hand on his heart and then puts his hand out to the crowd. But have a watch and a listen.
Thank you. My heart goes out to you.
I mean, he does do some weird mannerisms, doesn't he? He's kind of sort of awkward, he's sort of robotic-y figure in lots of ways anyway. It's so obviously not a Nazi salute. It's embarrassing that people are claiming. Do you think, I've asked this earlier, but do you think the people on the left who are in absolute meltdown on social media, do they actually believe that they think it really was?
Yes, they do. They absolutely do. They are the belief that that is what he did. He is therefore evil. So is President Trump. They don't like them anyway, so they're going to find any excuse they like.
Do they not realise how much it undermines them? I mean, they're being mocked remorselessly, especially because, you know, every other Democrat, every prominent Democrat has at some point been pictured or on video with their hand out in a similar angle.
But you're going to have to now have a chart. So when anybody standing and waving, how high are you allowed to have your hand? So are we going to do this with the lefties? Are we going to give them a massive protractor to take around? At what angle
do you
you're
know,
allowed?
I did see something online. I'm wondering if I actually did a screenshot or not. But it was just like, at this angle is petting a dog, at this angle is petting a child, at this angle or hailing a taxi, at this angle you are basically hailing Hitler.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just mad. Yeah. It's utterly mad, and it just undermines people. There's going to be stuff worth criticising.
Yeah, just wait.
I'm sure you'll have plenty of ammunition, and I will be. You know me. I criticise policies and what people say they do. Rather than just hate one person and worship something everyone else does. I really think that you guys have just made absolute buffoons of yourselves. You really, really have. So much more to talk about, including benefit cheats to be banned from the road. I mean, brilliant plan. Now, we're going to solve this. If you don't pay back the benefits you've defrauded the government of, by the way, they barely catch any of these people. There's billions that are being defrauded every single day. Everyone I know knows someone who shouldn't be on benefits. Just because you haven't been done for fraud doesn't mean you're not defrauding taxpayers. The solution, apparently, is you're going to be banned from the road. You're going to lose your licence for a couple of years. So surely what's going to happen then is we're just going to have a load more unlicensed drivers unable to get their vehicles insured. Yeah. And taxed, and therefore we're just going to have more people's insurance premiums go up because
they're just going to drive around anyway. We think they've all got licences and driving their cars. Yeah, they're taxed.
They're really honest about everything else.
If they're
except benefit
defrauding benefits, I'm sure that there's some other stuff that they're into at the same time. And then they're going to say they can't possibly look for work because they don't have a vehicle. Yeah, because the state has taken their driving licence.
But by the way, if they won't pay back the money, if they've got a car. Seize their car.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what happens to bailiffs, has said. It seize their car.
Seize it, sell it, money back. But we already have the powers to take away somebody's licence. We have
she works at the Home Office, she knows.
Yeah, under the Child Maintenance Service. Yeah. You have the right to remove driving licences and all passports. Yeah. So you could do that. You could easily do that for benefit fraud, but they choose not to. They choose not to in child maintenance as well, by the way.
Yeah.
Pointless, absolutely pointless.
Should we just have a collective deep sigh? 11:24 is the time. Coming up, we're going to take your calls, just particularly asking you about the government new restrictions to limit the sale of knives to under 18s in the wake of the Southport attack, because that's the solution. What is your reaction? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
Changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. What a beautiful name. The Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, Canada and the United States, that would really be something. All hell will break out in the Middle East, and it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:27 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go straight to your calls about Southport. The government wants new restrictions to limit the sale of knives to under 18s after Axel Rubicana. Apparently it was a total disgrace. He was able to buy a knife when he was 17 years old. It's illegal already to buy a knife if you're under 18. He could have waited 9 days and bought one then, and then killed another bunch of kids at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport. But no, he happened to do it 9 days earlier, so apparently there's going to be a change in the law. Great. Is that the solution? Is that the solution to keep our kids and all of us safe? I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Before we get to those calls, we do a couple of the messages we're getting in online. Lindsay says selling knives on Amazon was not the main problem that caused this. It's just trying to steer the story away from how the government handled this case and how it handled the public outrage afterwards. I mean, totally true. And Claire Bizzle, I know who's in the studio with me, I know you'll agree with me on that. It's the same as sort of after David Amos, the Tory MP, was stabbed in his constituency. Apparently it was all about hurty words online. Like, well, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. That was not the cause of his death. Paul says every house has a kitchen drawer full of knives. Sourcing knives is not the problem. Keeping them off our streets is. Weak policing, weak laws and weak government is the problem. Louise says fine, but any of them can walk into the kitchen of their home and help themselves. And Clinton says deflection, gaslighting, abuse by Starmer. This is Starmer protecting his party and himself with huge deflection. Kevin is on the line. He's in North Yorkshire. Hello, Kevin.
Hello there.
Hello.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for calling. What do you want to say?
Just basically this idea that redefining the terrorism is just ludicrous. And what it is, it's a clear example of legal people, lawyers wanting to do more legal structure. And the other fact of the matter is all the institutions, the police, look at Prevent, they're all ideologically captured. You look at the fact that most of what Prevent looks at is right-wing, this ethereal right-wing threat that's so big. Some poor child listens to his mother saying that she believes that the migrants should be sent home, says that in school, and suddenly they're on a Prevent list.
And exactly, and we know if you actually look at the stats in terms of attacks carried out and the number of deaths, it is off the scale an Islamist issue in this country. Other countries it's different, but for us it's Islamist.
Exactly, and that's the problem, is that these institutions are captured. They know that, and they can turn this round at a drop of a hat and turn around and say, oh, well, right-wing issues are now the issue, and this is where this will go. It'll definitely go down that route. They'll change the structure of it to make it look how they want it to look.
Yeah, and again, you still won't have the extra resources. What we actually need is extra resources so we can, tackle these people and frankly get them off the streets. Thank you for that, Kevin. Appreciate that. Let's talk to Craig. He's in Shrewsbury. Hello, Craig.
Hi, Julia. First time caller. Morning.
Lovely to hear from you, my darling. What do you want to say?
Yeah, I talked to your lady before on the phone, and on Monday I was looking for a bread knife, and anyway, cut a long story short, I got one on Amazon. Mm-hmm. And when I paid for it, there's like a box underneath telling me I needed to prove ID.
Yeah.
And I had to sign. So anyway, so the man came to my door. My stepfather answered it. He couldn't give it to him. So
it had to be to you.
It had to be to me. So I went down to get my driving license out, showing my date of birth, and I had to sign for it. Yeah. And he said, yep, great. And I thought, well, great. But I didn't need to do that. I could just go to my kitchen.
Yeah.
And grab a knife. So I'm just thinking what your caller just said before. Yeah, I think Amazon is a bit of a red herring, because if I could just say, when I was growing up, it was fisticuffs.
Yeah.
For at least 20 or 30 years. But then when we import all this lawless trouble from other countries, because I watch online, I see.
Yeah, we've got enough of our own, though. Don't worry, we have enough of our own. But there's not an argument to import anymore, to be fair. But
exactly. But what I mean is that they're all growing up together, and now it's the knife pandemic.
Well, yeah, the 14-year-old. The 14-year-old, arrested for killing a 12-year-old, apparently, in Birmingham. I mean, in broad daylight, the 14-year-old stabbed to death on a bus, involved in gangs again. People are being questioned about that. I mean, it's just extraordinary what's happening on the streets. And we've just allowed it to be normalised. Craig, appreciate your call. Hope you'll call again. 11:32 is the time, though. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be talking about Donald Trump, what he's been doing, those executive orders, what that woke preacher had to say, and plenty more, all with the journalist and author Lionel Shriver. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, this is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. We're talking a lot about, obviously, just a fallout on the Southport attacks and the government reaction. Do keep those calls coming in. Try and get to as many as we can. 0344 499 1000. If you want to have your say about Donald Trump, I think on a happier note, welcome to call in as well. We're joined now, I'm delighted to say, by journalist and author Lionel Shriver to talk about, well, that rip-roaring roller coaster ride we've already had since the Tuesday inauguration of Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States. Very good morning to you, Lionel.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to talk to you again.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to be joined by you. I mean, look, there's all the talk about what happened at the inauguration. I want to come on to woke bishops and their lecturing in a moment. But in terms of all those, that massive raft of executive orders that he announced in the first few hours, some signed on stage in front of, a cheering crowd at one of his rallies post the inauguration. Which were the executive orders that you were most happy about? And were there any you were concerned about?
Well, in relation to most of them, I have to confess, I was jubilant. I'm one of those people who hasn't ever been a big Trump supporter. I have, to put it mildly, concerns about his character. Yes. But I've always liked a lot of his policies, which has put me electorally in an awkward position. And in fact, the New York Times has documented that there are a majority of the country supports him on a policy level while having concerns about him as a character. I was delighted about his attempt to get control of the border.
I mean, that policy is even more popular than he is.
Vastly. I mean, I was astonished to come across the figure that in one poll, 67% of Americans not just support getting control of the border, but mass deportations, which in American terms is extreme.
Yeah, I mean, people have really woken up to this. I mean, 11 million people crossing the border and in America illegally. I mean, look, those sort of numbers. That's going to take a long time to deal with if he deals with all of it. But it is extraordinary that you're going to be seeing CNN and many of the other woke media. They'll be just having non-stop footage of crying immigrant children. About their fathers being snatched away, and it seems to me the American public are going to go, "We're done with this."
Well, it's going to be interesting to watch. The trouble is that most Americans don't really believe in the country's right to enforce its own immigration laws and to keep anyone out.
Yeah.
Even people who are really keen on immigration control and the enforcement of the law in theory, once you confront them with a picture of a screaming child and being torn from the arms of his or her mother, then it's over.
Yeah.
So it's I'm afraid that support for mass deportations is soft.
Yeah, and we're going to see how that plays out.
A lot of it is going to simply crumble away.
I'm assuming you were also very interested to hear the sort of the action on DEI, on diversity, equality, and inclusion policies, but also the statement that the federal government of the United States only recognises two sexes, male and female.
Oh, that was thrilling. And although you have to admit that when your society has got to the point where the president has to get up there and say there are only two sexes, male and female, and it's some kind of an outrage.
Yeah,
really,
it's controversial.
You've really arrived at a position of serious decay.
And you wrote a recent book about this, mania. I mean, and this is the thing, it is extraordinary. I see, the BBC reporting, these controversial executive orders. Controversial to whom? I mean, not to most people. Let me play a clip of this woke bishop who basically, wagged her finger at the Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and their families. This is the Right Reverend Marion Edgar Bood, Bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Washington. Here's what she had to say at supposedly an interfaith, non-political church service in Washington yesterday.
In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families. Some who fear for their lives.
I mean, those people who are watching Lionel Driver won't be able to see the glorious expressions on the faces of the Trumps and the Vances. But what did you make of that little finger-wagging lecture?
Well, what you also missed was the picture of me rolling my eyes until they almost got stuck in the back of my head. This is utterly absurd. The notion that especially gay and lesbian children are endangered by the Trump presidency is especially off base because in his opposition to so-called gender-affirming care for children, he is protecting kids who will probably turn out to be gay or lesbian when they grow up.
Yeah,
there are a lot of statistics to support
huge amount of evidence that is often the case. Exactly, a lot of vulnerable children with autism and the like. Yeah, I thought that was particularly strange. But also, trans people apparently living in fear for their lives.
Yeah, I mean, for their lives, and this is all part of the hysteria among Democrats that's only just getting started. They were kind of slow on the uptake on this because I think they were just knocked for six at the election, but they're starting to rev up. I mean, one of the op-eds in the New York Times is this is how tyranny begins.
But it really is That's laughable.
It is laughable.
And I'm like you. I share a lot of concerns about Donald Trump. I mean, some of my colleagues are just like, whoop, whoop, whoop. I mean, I was very pleased he won. I would have voted for him over Kamala Harris. And we both agreed, you know, his conversation before how awful she was as a candidate on policies and everything. But I mean, I don't share like a sort of a great love for Donald Trump. I think he's going to do some great things that need to be done on many different things. But I do also worry. I mean, Donald Trump's about Donald Trump.
Yes, and I think it's worth saying that I, for example, do not completely embrace his pardoning of the January 6th.
No, absolutely not.
I think there probably are individual cases where injustice has been done. I think that for them to have got that many convictions, 1,600, suggests that there was some over prosecution. And, you know, in an era where we have very lax enforcement of the law in many other areas, you know, shoplifting, stealing, burglary, et cetera, the sentences were quite harsh. And it's clear that the intention was to send a message. And to,
we've had our own example of that here in the UK, but then we are talking about, in the case, you know, January 6th, but also here, you know, people are physically attacking police officers, you know, who are giving pardons, or some of those, very few having their sentences commuted. But in fact, American polls suggest actually only about 20% of Americans support his move on that. So that's very much for sort of the MAGA base, isn't it, rather than for the population at large. What do you make of, I mean, the energy policy? I'm very, very intrigued by this. You know, the drill, baby, drill. Let's get cheap, affordable energy. The AI boost that you can only do with cheap, you know, very, very plentiful electricity. And the promise of, you know, we're going to be a booming economy. You know, you spend a lot of time living in Europe as well as an American citizen. Do you think that the contrast between America and Britain and the EU is going to grow even sharper?
Certainly the energy policy will make a big difference between who thrives and who doesn't. I mean, the push for more exploration of fossil fuels is just, it has to do with being pro-reality. It really is.
Well, a lot of these policies are about that, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, over 80% of the world's energy use is still fossil fuel based. And it is not physically possible to simply convert overnight to green energy, which is, you know, as we know, unreliable and very expensive.
Yeah.
So if Europe continues to pursue airheaded green policies, it will end up just outsourcing its manufacturing elsewhere. It will make absolutely no difference to the climate.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, we're going to be talking more about that after 12 o'clock, actually. Just want to ask you about one final thing. I'll play another clip. The left, Democrats, left here, lost their minds over claims that Elon Musk did a Nazi salute at one of the rallies. I'm going to play the clip again. Not so helpful for those who are listening as opposed to watching online. He touches his heart, his breast where his heart is, and then he shoots out his hand, so my heart goes out to you. Let's have a watch and a listen of what he actually did.
Thank you. My heart goes out to you.
From my description, from watching that, Lina Shriver, do you think he did a Nazi salute?
Of course not.
Why do people claim that he did?
Because they're desperate to make connections between Nazism and Trump. This has been going on throughout the election, and it doesn't take anything. Obviously, if you give this person even the smallest benefit of the doubt, you can see, he even says, you know, my heart goes out to you, that, you know, like that.
He doesn't say Heil Hitler. There's a clue.
No, and we know what a Nazi salute looks like, you know, and it doesn't. What he just did doesn't resemble it. But, you know, I'm sorry. I think this just reflects very poorly on the Democrats. It is an expression of desperation.
But also, these are the very same people, both the left in America and in Britain, who bleat on constantly about disinformation and misinformation and how we need to have censorship online and people shouldn't be allowed to spout their lies. And then they do this. I mean, they've been mocked remorselessly by, frankly, anyone sane. You don't have to be a Trump or an Elon Musk sort of worshipper to say this is clearly not what you say it is. They just undermine themselves, don't they?
Yes, I mean, you know, it's said that nothing suggests that you have lost a grip like having to compare something to World War II. I mean, it is a reaching for hyperbole, which is an expression of impoverishment. I found that during the election, all these efforts to compare Trump to Hitler really fell flat. It suggested that these people had run out of legitimate arguments.
And I'm waiting for the moment when they realise that just looking at election results, that stuff doesn't work anymore. And we'll have to leave it there. But Lana Shriver, great to be joined by journalist and author Lana Shriver. Thank you for that. 11:47 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, going to be talking more about Southport, more from Claire Pearsall. And after 12, we're going to be talking more about energy policy in America and energy policy in airports here. Nothing to compare. That's all coming up. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. For me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 11:51 is the time. Let's go back to the government's reaction to the Southport killings and that guilty plea from Axel Rudikabana on Monday. He's going to be sentenced on Thursday. Let's talk to Nusret Mehtab. She's a former Scotland Yard superintendent and joins us now. Good morning to you, Nusret.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you. What do you make of the Home Secretary talking about it being a disgrace that this man was able to buy a knife when he was still 17 and introducing a new law for double ID on that? Talk about redefining terrorism. Does that in any way go any way at all to actually preventing a future crime like this?
No, it doesn't. And it's interesting because the problem isn't about online shopping. Yeah, it is a disgrace that a 17-year-old could buy a knife online with Amazon, but that's not the problem, because we've seen, just sadly, Julia, the 12-year-old being stabbed and died, you know, so...
And with a 14-year-old being suspected in Birmingham.
Yeah. Children, killing children. So this isn't about online shopping. And, you know, they're going to put in extra measures, stronger measures in, I think, in the summer in the police crime and policing bill. But that doesn't stop what's happening now, and that doesn't stop another crime happening. Yes, they can redefine terrorism, because I think it's time we did look at the definition. This is a definition that falls under the 2000 Act, and now that's slightly changed. And they couldn't, although Rudikabana was charged with terrorist offences because of Ricin and the manual, he doesn't fall within the definition.
But does that matter? I mean, whether we call it a terrorist attack? I mean, one of the reasons why I think there was this sort of wariness about giving out any information, and then there was that sort of big vacuum of information, and that got filled by, you know, bad players stirring up, trying to stir up racial and hatred. And they were, but clearly far right and those from abroad as well. But part of that came about because people don't believe when they're told, oh, look, it's not a terror attack. No, it's not another terror attack. No, the guy shouted Allahu Akbar. It's not a terror attack. He's got mental health problems. And we've heard that so many times. People are just like, we don't believe anything the authorities say anymore.
Right, yeah, but in many cases, you know, what people want it to be and what it actually is about are two different things. And if you look at what happened, I think it was in Liverpool, when the man who blew himself up in front of a woman's hospital on Remembrance Day wasn't a terrorist incident. So what we want to be terrorism and what it is are two different things. And so it is important to redefine that, because there seems to be this big vacuum of vulnerable people that are drawn to violence, and in this case, it's a classic case, but it doesn't fall within terrorism.
But what difference does it make if it does? Because we know this man was referred, as a boy, referred 3 times to Prevent. We know he'd been caught with a knife, he tried to attack people at school, he'd been expelled. We know all of this stuff, but we also know virtually every single, I can't even think of a single case where we've had has been designated a terror attack, some sort of lone attacker. Virtually every single one of those cases, they've been known to the authorities, the police have known about them, the security service known about them. Often they'd been following them, but they didn't have resources. Whether we call something terrorism or not isn't going to make any difference to whether we've got the resources to get these people off the streets, follow them so they can't be a risk, or do whatever we need to do to keep people safe. So it doesn't really matter whether we call it terrorism or anything else, does it?
It does. Because in this case, and I'm going to talk about this case, he was referred to Prevent 3 times. He didn't fall within their category. Now, you have to fall within and we're not going to go over the definition because he didn't fall within that.
He didn't have a specific ideology. He just was obsessed with violence.
Yeah. So, you know, over 6,000 people were referred to Prevent, but the number that were actually taken forward was about 500. And so what about those people that are referred, as in this case, 3 times, didn't meet the threshold, but what support was given to him outside? And I think that's what we need to look at. So the government does need to look at Prevent. It's not fit for purpose, hasn't been fit for purpose for a long time. And so we can say, well, he was referred to Prevent, so it's terrorism. No. But what do we do with these people that are vulnerable, attracted to violence? What support is the government going to give them? You know,
but that comes down to resources fundamentally. Again, whatever the label is, what Why do we identify someone as clearly being a threat? Social workers wouldn't enter his home without police there. Clearly he was a threat. But yeah, just leave him. Just leave him there. He can walk the streets anytime he wants. I mean, that doesn't make sense to most of us. It seems to me we've got an awful lot of people, whether they are terrorists, whether they're inspired by far-right ideology, misogyny, Islamism, whatever it is, or just obsessed with violence. We have a load of ticking time bombs walking around. Most of them men, by the way. Very few women involved in this. And they are a danger to us. But we're just going to shrug and go, oh, well, let's wait till the next time. And then we light a candle, sing Kumbaya and wait for the next one.
Well, I hope that we don't. And
we know that's what we're going to do. You're going to hope, right? That's what we're going to do. It's what we've been doing the last 20 years.
But I hope that there's public pressure now and public outcry will change this. And now they will have to look at that big percentage in the middle that we have to support and give. Funding is one of them. And changing online measures isn't going to make a difference to the next person. Yeah. So, stop with this showcase. We're going to do this, because to me, it doesn't seem like we're doing anything. He hasn't tackled knife crime. There's still an epidemic out. As
we've seen only in the last 24 hours. Nusrat Mehtab, thank you so much. Really good to get your perspective on this. Former Scotland Yard Superintendent Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Special Advisor to the Home Office. You were nodding away to a lot of that.
I was. It's all of the stuff about prevent, and it isn't fit for purpose.
The prevent is just about people with ideology and terrorism.
It is. I think it needs to be expanded, and I think Nusrat was quite right. What do you do with those people who don't meet the threshold? Sort of go, you're not a terrorist.
Next, move on.
Off you go.
Well, that appears to be exactly what happened.
And
you're too dangerous to be at a normal school. We'll put you in a special school, but you don't tend a special school. You went like 3 days.
Yeah. Well,
and then what? So we leave you at home. So we know you're sitting there being radicalised online. We know you're sitting horrible stuff, but we'll just leave you at home every day.
Yeah. And that's what doesn't make sense. Why is nobody looking at what you can do with these people? Who is the best agency? Maybe we do need to involve prevent with people who have fixated ideology.
But the thing is, of course, these things cost money. If you're going to deal with all this, following people, keeping an eye on people, it costs money. But you know what also costs money? Dealing with the policing of a horrific attack, a massive multi-million-pound public inquiry, dealing with all of that, quite apart from, let's face it, the real cost, which is children being stabbed to death at a summer holiday camp.
Yeah.
And the whole, not family, not just families, but communities being and the country being traumatised by that. We talk about some of the things that we are willing to spend money on this country. This is one of them that we're happy to pay taxes for, guys.
Yeah, this would be right at the top of my list if I had to pay any extra tax.
Yeah.
I pay a fair bit
Criminal
already.
justice, prisons, the preventative stuff. Absolutely. Yeah. It's just a no-brainer for most of us. But no, don't worry, we're just going to have new extra rules buying a knife on Amazon. Well done, everybody. Look, we'll talk more about this. We'll get more of your calls on this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Coming up, of course, it's PMQs. We're going to get an update on all of what's gone on. Remember the usual rules. We get someone to watch so you don't have to. We're going to be talking to Ross Clark up next about what Donald Trump has had to say about net zero and basically how America is going to leave Britain and the rest of Europe behind on that issue. That's all coming up. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Welcome back to the show. I very much appreciate you joining me. And whether you are listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, always lovely to have your company. Still with me, your former Conservative Special Advisor, Claire Pearsall. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about Donald Trump's plans to throw out net zero policies. Yay! Boost energy production. Yay! And why the UK and the EU should be doing the same. Brackets. They won't, close brackets. We're also going to be talking more about this absurd new policy. Benefit cheats being banned from driving for 2 years under proposed new anti-fraud law. Brilliant. We'll just have loads more people on the roads who haven't got insurance. Brilliant. Well played. And also, PMQs has just started in the Commons, but as always, we get someone else to watch it so you don't have to. Promise you, we will bring you the highlights a little bit later. Let's get straight to the issue of net zero and the like. No doubt at all, Claire Pearsall, one of the absolute top priorities for Donald Trump, he announced in his executive orders really early on, was about basically drill, baby, drill. You know, there was the immigration issues, the work issue, but the other big one is we are dumping, getting out of the Paris Climate Agreement. He went out of it the last time he was president. Biden went straight back in. He's now gone straight out of it. But basically, we're going to be drilling. We are going to be producing gas, producing oil, and we're going to be needing all of that because we need a lot of electricity for AI. It's all tied in to basically making America great again. Do you think there's any chance at all that we in Britain will learn the lessons and follow suit?
I would love to say yes, of course, but no. They won't. They are so convinced that we need to have windmills and solar panels and drive electric cars that we're going to save the planet all by ourselves. I think Donald Trump's message to the world, drill, baby, drill, is the right one. And I don't agree with him on very much, but this one I absolutely do. He wants to see affordable energy for Americans. What's happening in the United Kingdom? Where's our affordable energy?
It used to be a basic fundamental economic and by the way, key part of defence policy as well. But there we are. Well, let's talk about this with the journalist and author Ross Clark, who joins us now. Very good afternoon to you, Ross.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. Now, often we interview, and I say, you talk about your book, Not Zero, and I always love your subtitles, how an irrational target will impoverish you, help China, and won't even save the planet. And my goodness me, you've outlined and made those arguments fantastically. You've got a brand new book out this week, Far From Utopia, How Europe is Failing and Britain Could Do Better. Again, I mean, writing this, just when we've got Donald Trump arriving in the White House, planning to do, literally the opposite policies of most of Britain and Europe is very telling. But what is interesting is, although he's talking about getting rid of a lot of these policies and drill, baby, drill, the reality is even under Biden, they talked a lot about a lot of the net zero stuff and they ploughed a load of money into net zero policies. But actually, they were drilling away and fracking away already, weren't they?
They were. The US has had an unashamed policy of achieving national energy security through fracking and exploitation of oil reserves for the past 20 years. Whoever's been in the White House, whether it's been George W. Bush, Obama, Trump in his first manifestation or Biden, they all followed this policy, and it has enriched America hugely. Over the past 2 decades, America's been growing roughly about twice the rate that Europe has. And one of the most important reasons for that is because it has followed this policy of national energy security.
It's so funny, the idea that this suddenly became a good idea, that you should have national energy security. This is so basic for any nation state where you can. Some of the countries that are most vulnerable, like Japan, they have no natural resources. They have to import everything. That's why the seas are very important. We have wonderful national resources. We've got the North Sea. We've got the ability to frack. We've got oil. We've got all of these natural resources, and we're making a deliberate policy, not just under Labour. The Tories were doing it too, to basically not use them. But we still need those fossil fuels to fuel our energy needs, electricity included. So we import it from abroad. It's the definition of madness.
Yeah, it's not Donald Trump's America which is the outlier on climate and energy. most countries around the world are doing what he preaches, which is exploiting their oil and gas reserves, while, by the way, also investing in renewables. They're investing in both. Steady upward trend in investment in renewables and fossil fuels, because the world needs energy, growing population, growing wealth in the population, expectations of the world's population. The world needs growing energy, and most countries appreciate that's going to come in the short future, at least from fossil fuels, as much as it is going to come from renewables.
Well, we're going to get
only Britain, which is stands out on a limb on that and thinks we can do without it.
And apparently do a lot of electricity. Or at least they went down from 100% of electricity from renewable energy by 2030. Now it's just 95%. Again, equally unachievable. But Ed Miliband, the energy secretary, energy security or not zero secretary, he's warned Donald Trump. I love that he's warning Donald Trump that the rise of net zero is unstoppable. Quite in contrast to Donald Trump's drill baby drill pushing. He says, I think the transition is unstoppable, not fast enough, but unstoppable. I mean, eventually we will get to clean fuels, but it probably will be, within, the century as opposed to within the decade. That's the reality, isn't it? And yet this government is pushing on relentlessly with its net zero policies, and there's a little bit of tinkering on whether or not you're going to be allowed to, you're going to be banned from having a new gas boiler, or whether you're going to have this particular mandate on electric vehicles or this particular target. But fundamentally, government policy, energy policy and economic policy is all based on net zero targets. And it is not possible to boost the economy, to boost growth, if you've got those targets in place, is it?
Do you know how much wind energy we're generating at the moment? As we speak, 0.7% of our energy is coming from wind turbines.
Come on, let's have a round of applause for that. Well done.
2%
is that of our energy or of our electricity?
Of our electricity. And
which is only 20% of our energy needs.
Yes, that's right. And 2% is coming from solar power.
How?
Now,
I mean, I'm looking out there. How?
4 p.m, the sun's going to come down. Energy requirements are going to go up because it's going to get colder. And this is exactly the sort of weather conditions which Ed Miliband's policies just don't seem to take into account.
I'm sorry. At this point, I think if he were here, he would just shout climate denier at you, Ross.
Oh, we probably would, and that's what people bark at you when they haven't got any proper argument to counter what you're saying. I mean, do you know what? Ed Miliband's latest, for months and months, I tried to get out of his department what was its plan for situations like today when there's hardly any wind or any solar energy.
Most of the winter.
Now we do have some kind of answer. You know what Ed Miliband wants to? He wants to keep all our gas power stations sort of virtually mothballed in reserve so he can turn them on a day like today. Well, the cost of that is going to be incredible, because we're going to have to pay to maintain all these gas power plants so we can turn them on days like today. But then we're also going to have to pay to compensate those wind and solar farm owners when they are generating too much power to feed into the grid. So that the whole system is incredibly expensive.
And utterly mad. And again, the answer we keep being told is batteries, and there is absolutely no chance that we're going to be able to spend trillions, which is what it would cost, on the battery storage that would be necessary for us to be reliant just for the 20% of our energy that is electricity.
Yeah, just go back to those statistics. Do you know how much power is being provided by battery installations at the moment?
How much?
Absolute zilch. It doesn't even show up.
Oh, we've
got some of these battery installations, but they're so expensive that they never get used. And what we're doing instead is we are importing energy from the near continent, from France, Belgium, Netherlands, and so on. 12% of our energy in the past day has come from overseas, and that has been the situation for the past year. We're just sucking in more and more energy, electricity, through these subsea connectors. They were supposed to work in both directions. We were supposed to export electricity as much as we were going to import it, and Boris Johnson told us we were going to be the Saudi Arabia of wind.
No.
And what's happening is these interconnectors, we're just merely importing electricity through them now, and with obvious effects on our balance of payments.
Well, yeah, I mean, a small point, and indeed on our security as a nation, because again, if you haven't got energy and you haven't got cheap affordable energy, you can't defend yourself. This is really basic stuff, isn't it? One of the key things that Donald Trump's also announced in the last 24 hours is his massive investment in AI. AI is the future, and we're talking about huge sums of money. But the key thing, $500 billion. The key thing that AI uses is extraordinary amounts of electricity. Now, we've had a lot of talk in this country about how Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, and she's off in Davos, and we'll come to that in a moment, about how want to entice the tech entrepreneurs to this country, and we develop and innovate an awful lot of fantastic tech in this country, and then it all ships off to America, partly because of course our energy costs are so high, worse for manufacturers than they are for domestic use. But is there any possibility that we're going to be able to develop a big AI industry and be at the forefront of this major tech revolution if we've got energy costs that are 5 times that of America?
No.
That's the short answer.
Basically. You look at, take West London, for example. I mean, we've had a lot of data centres built there in the last few years, and the government wants more to be built there, and hugely energy-hungry things. And as a result, housing developers have been told, well, you can't build any new houses in that area for another 10 years till 2035 because the grid connection is not strong enough. There's not enough electricity can be shipped in there because it's being taken up by all these data centers. Well, how you add a load of AI, data centers on top of that, well,
it's just not going to happen. I mean, it's just pie in the sky.
Realise its dream.
I mean, talking about
AI superpower.
Indeed, I mean, talking about pie in the sky. Getting planes in the sky much easier if you've got a load of airports and a load of runways. I'm very surprised by this, but Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, over in Davos, and she's got a big speech next week, we're told. But she's going to be talking about, boosting our number of runways. So at Gatwick and at Luton and at Heathrow, a 3rd runway at Heathrow. My God, I think that since the day I became a political journalist, that has been a big battle. But what's fascinating is you've got, half the cabinet who voted against a 3rd runway at Heathrow, including, I think, one Keir Starmer when he was in opposition, are now apparently going to be asked to sort of back basically powers to override any legal objections, of which there will be many, including from Sadiq Khan, the London Labour mayor, to more runways around in all the major London airports. Do you think that those moves will be good economically, or do you think that the concerns about the impact on climate change, which inevitably will be brought up, and our non-net zero targets will mean they never happen?
No, it's an interesting schism, isn't it, in the Labour Party. It's completely ripped down the middle on this now because new airport capacity is totally at odds with, the government's net zero policy, and because, we can't fuel our planes on anything else other than fossil fuels at the moment. I mean, Richard Branson did fly a jet across the Atlantic a couple of years ago, powered by used vegetable oil, but there are not enough chip shops in the world to feed all our planes. We do need more runways, we do need more air capacity, but I've never thought Heathrow is the right place to put another runway. I mean, years ago the Heathrow should have been relocated to the Thames estuary years ago. You know what we should do there? We should build a tidal barrier which prevents flooding in London, also use it as a tidal power station, reliable green energy, and on land behind it we would reclaim some land behind it and build an airport there, and also we could have a road across the barrage, so we could have a 4-in-1 infrastructure project there.
Far too sensible. Anyway, even if the government did try and do that, they'd manage to mess it up. They build it in the wrong place. It would cost 10 times as much, and it wouldn't be built until, probably to 100 years' time. And that's what we do in this country. Look, in your book, Far From Utopia, How Europe is Failing and Britain Could Do Better, I mean, it's amazing how much this government want to desperately tie us back in with Europe. And we've, Ed Davey this morning, Lib Dem leader, has been going on about going into the customs union again. We know we know that the front bench of the Labour Party absolutely want to do that. And let's face it, quite a lot of Tories too. But what I find fascinating, and I'd love to hear your reaction to this, is like, why are so many British politicians still fixated with Europe when Europe's economies are like dominoes failing one by one, and particularly the powerhouse economy that drives the whole of the EU, which is Germany? Why are they so fixated with that and not the booming economies across the Atlantic and in Asia?
It is bizarre, isn't it? I mean, you listen to the Ramonas, they think that sort of Britain has sort of left this terribly economically successful and liberal-minded
booming
continent of Europe. And to make that point, they sort of rely on us not actually looking too much at what's going on across the Channel. Germany's just about to enter its third year of recession. France is up to its eyeballs in debt, just like we are. Yes, our economy is flatlining, but that is true, across Europe. And, Italy and Spain in the last couple of years have done a little bit better than most. But, that comes on top of years of decline. And, as I said earlier, the basic backstory to this is that for the whole of this century, European economies have been grown about half the rate that US economy has grown. And that's no accident. It's because of the way Europe approaches things. For our industrial policy, the EU has always looked upon sort of existing industries as sort of heritage things. They've got to be preserved, and anything new, internet and social media and everything, that's a threat, and it has to be suppressed through regulation. And I mean, that's a fundamental background to why Europe cannot grow. Think of the world's 100 biggest companies now. It's only about 17, I think, are European.
Wow, that's fascinating.
The Europe makes it only 15th in the list of the biggest countries.
And yet we have some of the world's biggest economies. It's a massive trading bloc, but it just sort of it's sort of anti-innovation. It's absolutely fascinating. I could talk to you all day. Ross Clark, journalist and author, his new book, Far From Utopia: How Europe is Failing and Britain Could Do Better. He's terribly afflicted by this terrible need to use facts to make his argument, which makes it terribly unpopular. But this is a brilliant new book out this week by Ross Clark. Thank you, Ross. Claire Pearsall, listening to that, I mean, I always love talking to Ross, love all of his books. It is amazing. Again, people just throw out insults about this. You can argue, you can throw out as many insults as you want. The facts don't lie, on the energy issue. Energy is, you cannot have a booming economy. You cannot, pay for your healthcare. If you're, Labour obsessed with the NHS, I mean, literally the NHS with a little island attached. But you can't pay for any of it if you don't have growth. And you can't have growth without cheap, plentiful, affordable energy. And you can't have security unless you've got secure energy. You can't defend yourself if you can't build, make steel and things like that. This is so basic. And yet this government is pursuing even madder policies than your sodding lot did.
And that's saying something.
I mean, wow. Hold my beer, said Ed Miliband.
Absolutely. But do you remember the cold snap that we had only a couple of weeks ago, where the lights nearly went out because we were running out of power? 2 gas power station owners got 12 million quid each for supplying.
2 million an hour.
Yeah, 3 hours of electricity. So we've got money to throw at that, whereas we just kept our own sort of fossil fuels. And
where are those nuclear power stations they were supposed to be building? I mean, again, your lot didn't either.
No, they didn't.
I'm genuinely at the point when these things should virtually be criminal. This abject failure to deal with basic infrastructure, the stuff that it's just such an abject failure. And I blame civil servants as well, because they're the people who should be going, no, I'm sorry, Minister, that doesn't work. I mean, what's going on in the Energy Secretary's office? I mean, these people, again, they're either stupid or they're liars. You can't think that you can do what they want to do.
No.
If you know any facts. So are they stupid or are they lying?
you need to be able to deal with ministers in a proper way and tell them when something is an entirely trash idea.
Yes, you need a Sir Humphreys.
You do.
Is that how very courageous, Minister, to try and basically turn the lights off in a first world country. How very courageous of you, Cabinet Minister Ed Miliband. Anytime, my love, you are so welcome to come on the show. Basically, he and I have got the same degree. We know just as much about the same topics, except I'm using facts. Anyway, up next, we are going to get to more of your phone calls. We're going to be covering PMQs as well, find out what the highlights were. We don't take the whole thing because basically I'd like you to stay listening. But so we are going to find out what the highlights are. But we're going to take your calls on this and indeed on Southport and the government's reaction. Yet again, abject failure to deal with the root cause of the problem when it comes to violence on our streets. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
Government borrowing costs hit a 27-year high, and the pound is taking a pounding. Gloomy economic data is expected to show inflation and growth are off course.
Let me ask again, and can you please be clear, will Rachel Reeves be your Chancellor for the duration of this parliament?
Rachel Reeves is doing a fantastic job. She has my full confidence, and she has the full confidence of the entire party.
Can Rachel Reeves hold on as Chancellor?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming up very soon, we will be finding out what's been happening at Prime Minister's Questions. No doubt Southport, a very big topic for questioning. We're also going to be talking about benefit cheats. Apparently the government's going to tackle benefit cheats by stopping them from driving legally with a licence. I wonder if benefit cheats will drive without a licence. I don't know. Oh, such a difficult question to answer, isn't it? Before that, let's go to your phone calls. I'm asking you to call in about the government's new restrictions on the sale of knives to under 18s in the wake of the Southport attack. The outrage, the disgrace, apparently, that Yvette Cooper says it was as Home Secretary, that Axel Rudikabana, I must have said his name 15 times this week, I'm surprised I can't say it, that he was able to buy a knife at the age of 17 online. That's illegal in Amazon, but he could have bought one legally 9 days later, even under her new rules. So is this really even touching the sides of how you deal with this issue? Let's go to Adrian, who is in Cornwall. Hello, Adrian.
Julia.
Good morning. Afternoon, sorry. What do you want to say?
Well, basically, I want to talk about the sort of immediate aftermath of the riots. The immediate aftermath of the atrocity in Southport. And I think the riots could very easily have been prevented, Julia.
I agree.
I mean, I think what needed to happen in that back, you remember that sort of period immediately afterwards, social media was full of three things.
Yeah.
The guy's an asylum seeker, he arrived on a dinghy, and he's living free in a local hotel.
Yeah.
That was the sort of misinformation being put out, not just by people in Britain, but a lot of foreign actors, as we've since found out. No, I feel had Starmer taken the opportunity, as he did yesterday with a address to the nation, to go on the TV like he did and say, you don't have to give anything away. All he had to say was, I can assure you, the rumours of the person we got in
Those
custody
aren't true.
Are inaccurate.
I don't think anyone would have believed. I think people, by that point, the reason why that was able to stir up so much anger at that moment was because people felt that, I mean, I've sat on air so many times when they've said, some sort of attack, it's mental health, and I think people would just roll their eyes and go, really? Is that what we're going to say? I think people just lost trust.
He's never done that before, though, Julie, has he? He's never done that before. He's never, since he's been in power, he's never actually, addressed the nation.
Yeah, well, he'd only been in power a few weeks at that point, of course.
I know, but he was, I think my point is, I'm pretty sure some of that rioting would not have occurred if he laid out those three basic facts. He's not an asylum seeker. He's not living free in a hotel. Yeah. I mean, that is what really got people.
But I think also he's born in Cardiff. I think that everyone felt that actually that was deliberately, I think, disingenuous. I think they. Yeah. I think they knew that, and again, there's just this lack of trust. And I think the two-tier policing that followed, two-tier justice that has followed, in that the wake of how different groups, different communities, as we often call it, are treated, just played out to everybody that this is not, that something's going on. I think that's the problem.
Oh, I was of exactly the same opinion myself at the time, and I still are of the opinion that something's going on. But let's not forget the people that rioted. So several of them went looking for the asylum hotel.
Absolutely. There are plenty of people who are behind bars for those riots. I'm very, very happy behind bars. I've never ever defended any of those actions. I don't care how angry people are. The rioting and some of the threats made were absolutely appalling. Really appreciate your call, Adrian. Thank you so much. Let's go to James now. He's in Staffordshire. James, you want to talk about the net zero conversation we've just had?
Yeah, I watched a podcast last week, and an expert woman on this was on the Free Speech Union. Expert woman on energy said if we came within 3 hours to pretty much nationwide blackouts.
Yeah.
Now they're trying to pass a bill through Parliament, which they're going to do by the back door, which was what Theresa May did.
Yeah.
It's called the Climate and Nature Bill.
Now, we're going to be talking about this on the show tomorrow.
It's terrifying.
There are so many measures in that bill which are mind-blowing in terms... Just briefly outline for people, and we will carry on the conversation tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, basically they want to stop and ban all fossil fuels that we generate, also to incredibly restrict the fossil fuels we allow into the country. Yeah. So no farming, no transport, no buses, no nothing like that.
And within a
want to rewild half the countryside.
Yeah, and within a very small space of time, when we absolutely will not have, as we don't today, the renewable energy to replace that.
Yeah, and there's 200 MPs behind this, and then they're having the recess. So all they need to get it through is to have wait until everybody's gone home. They all come into Parliament, vote it through like Theresa May did.
Yep.
And if this is the point now where we're 3 hours away from a blackout, what's it going to be when they stop all oil and gas?
Yeah, I mean, again, I like to think they're not going to go through, but then they're talking the game and then they'll have their excuses. Again, people think these are conspiracy theories. We're going to be talking about this in detail on the show because people do need to know this is the stuff that's happened. Again, a lot of the mess we're in now is because of what happened under Theresa May in her dying days of her failing government. And there's legislation before then as well that gets us into this mess, and it passes under the radar. And the next thing you know, we are basically facing economic catastrophe as a result. I really appreciate your call, James. Thank you very much. You're paying a lot more attention than most of our MPs do. That is for sure. 12:31 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to Alicia Fitzgerald, who's political correspondent, and it's her job today to watch PMQ so you don't have to and I don't have to. And we'll find out the highlights. No doubt a lot of conversation about Southport. That's up next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Very much appreciate you joining me. Still in the studio, I'm delighted to say, is Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Special Government Advisor. Some of those words were written in the right order. It's been a long day, what can I say? Delighted to be joined now by political correspondent Alicia Fitzgerald. Lovely to see you. Always great to get you back in the studio. Peter Cobbold, sadly, is unwell. Wave hello. Hope you're feeling better. Man flu. You know, that's the sympathy you get in my home. Alicia very kindly stepping in to watch PMQs so we don't have to. Now, there are two obvious topics for Kemi Badenoch to ask her 6 questions on of the Prime Minister. Southport, massively in the news, dominating all the front pages for days after that guilty plea from Max Rudabakana. Also, the economy. Huge big issue. Davos, World Economic Forum's happening right now. Rachel Reeves is there right now. We've had some really dire economic figures and things are not looking good. So which of those did she talk about?
Well, absolutely none of them. And it seems to be a bit of a repeated theme with Kemi Badenoch at PMQs. This isn't the first time where everyone said, well, she'll definitely go in on this. There's been a huge story in the news that is kind of an easy win for the Conservatives, and she's not mentioned it at all. Instead, today, she used all 6 questions to talk about the Education and Schools Bill, which is kind of slightly old news as well. This was only really came up when that debate about the grooming gang scandal arose. That's really the only time it's been in the news, and that was a couple of weeks ago. And it's not.
And that was when the Tories tried to add on an inquiry.
And the actual bill itself has not been something that's been hugely controversial. It's not been making massive headlines.
Although the Tories are opposed to it. A lot of it's undoing the academies, independence and things like that. But absolutely not on the news agenda.
No, absolutely not. And it's not to say that it's not valid. However, when there are so many other things, as the topics that you just mentioned, Southport, the economy, so many easy wins for the Conservatives now, it was really quite surprising that she chose to focus on.
Well, shall we have a watch and a listen of what she did ask?
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister thinks that he can distract people from what is wrong with this bill. This is not about breakfast clubs and school uniforms. Teachers and parents will be horrified at just how bad this bill is. Even his own MPs may not realise it, but the bill will cut teachers' pay. It cuts pay for 20,000 teachers. His education secretary says there is not a ceiling for pay. They're all shaking their heads. They clearly haven't read the bill. She hasn't read the bill either.
Mr. Speaker, we do need flexibility in our schools. And if she'd hopped off social media for a while, she would have seen the amendment that was put down this morning to achieve that end. But she says this bill is not about child protection. We had a young child killed who was taken out of a school by an abuser. This bill closes that gap.
Now, this, of course, is little Sarah Sharif, isn't it? Here's the thing. I mean, I can understand the point of wanting to wrong foot the Prime Minister a little bit. Like, he'll have prepped on South, but there's prepped on the economy, you know, ready to go. And therefore, you go on something completely different, then, you know, you kind of wrong foot a little bit. But it feels very off agenda. I'm looking on social media, not that we should be judging everything by that. An awful lot of people are saying, well, hold on a minute, you know, talk about a uni party, you're not discussing this. But we know that the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philps, has been talking an awful lot about this. We also know Reform MPs have been talking an awful lot about this issue of what's been going on in South. But indeed, Kemi Badenoch herself, but that's a weird choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And even worse is the point that she made in that clip, and that's the one that seems to be the kind of top line from their exchange. She was saying that teachers' pay will be cut in this bill, but what she didn't actually realise and wasn't up to date with, which I think is what Keir Starmer was saying with the whole get off social media and you might realise, is that Labour have actually added an amendment to that bill to make sure that teachers' pay isn't cut, and that happened today. So she was basically attacking him for something
that has already been changed.
Has been changed, and she obviously just that totally passed her by. So this idea of trying to catch him off guard.
Crucially, her advisors. I mean, some of them should be sitting there. Again, this comes down to does PMQs really matter? But she hasn't set the world alight as Tory leader so far. And I'm a big fan of Kemi Badenoch. I think she stood for a lot of really key issues. But she hasn't set the world alight. She hasn't got masses. Well, a lot of Tory members are not being very impressed so far with her leadership so far. And, you know, where are the policies? Where, you know, is something more hard-hitting? This is going to make a lot of, not just MPs, there aren't that many Tory MPs too, but a lot of Tory members just go, well, hold on a minute, like what, and voters. What are you talking about here?
Yeah, and I think the issue is it's not the first time. I mean, she's not been leader very long, and I can probably remember 2 other situations where it just seems like it's not hit the mark. It just seems like there have been such obvious wins for them, and it's just been avoided. And no one really seems to know what the reason is for this. Is it she's getting poor advice from people? Is it she's playing it too safe? We don't really know, but it seems to happen quite a lot. And I think people just want to see her kind of score those easy wins.
I mean, and again, Claire Pearson, I don't want point scoring over, you know, kids dying in Parliament, but there are points to be made. Is there always that problem though with Kemi Badenoch or any Tory leader, whoever it is? Unless they were like brand newly elected in July and never, no one had ever heard of them before. That basically, whatever you say, whatever criticism you make of the Labour government, any policy and anything they do, it's you were in charge for 14 years and you did nothing.
But you should be able to then put that back to them and say, you can't answer the question, you're the Prime Minister now. You can give that back in spades. And unfortunately, I think both of them just aren't very good at that off-the-cuff, knockabout PMQs that we're always used to.
Yeah, and again, which some Prime Ministers and opposition leaders are much better at than others. Although, again, William Hague was great at that as an opposition leader, and I don't remember him ever being Prime Minister. So, you know, there's a point worth making. Let's go to another question. Obviously, Lib Dems, more MPs now, so Ed Davey gets to stand up and And
he looked delighted about that.
He's so excited. He used to go to the SNP. I'd say, I've always thought, Stephen Flynn's superb. I mean, some of his skewed, absolutely skewed, the various Tory leaders who he came across. But Ed Davey asked for something rather more topical.
He did, yes. And do you know what? Fair play to him. At least he kind of hit the mark and hit the news agenda this week. He basically asked Keir Starmer in a very kind of short, albeit maybe lacking in a little bit of detail question, whether the UK would just sell out to Trump, and Keir Starmer just kind of looked a bit annoyed and said, absolutely, they won't do that, and sat down, and that was the end of it.
Well, let's have a watch and a listen of that.
Mr. Speaker, turning now to the United States, can the Prime Minister guarantee that he will not sell out Britain's fantastic farmers to Donald Trump in a trade deal that undermines our high food and animal welfare standards in the way that the Conservatives sold them out in the Australia and New Zealand deals?
Mr. Speaker, we will work with the US, we will work with other countries, but we will never lower our standards.
I mean, I personally think that one question was better than the entirety of the exchange between Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer. I mean, it's relevant, it's important.
It's one of the biggest issues affecting the country right now, and especially, of course, with Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor over in Davos. Not that many people really, turns out, very interested in Davos, the great and the good and the powerful and the rich there. Not really interested in hearing what Rachel from Accounts thinks. But Donald Trump's going to be over there, I think, tomorrow, speaking later in the afternoon. That might be quite good fun. See what he has to say there. But is your genuine impression that Keir Starmer though is sort of on the back foot, or is he? I mean, because his statement in that address to the nation yesterday morning on Southport, I mean, certainly didn't convince our audience. That's for sure. People feel there's a lot of anger. There's a lot of feeling that, that they don't feel, when you look at the grooming gangs issue and all these other issues, that they're just, you look at the economic issues and not turning the tide on any of the major issues in this country, that things just aren't going very well.
Yeah, I think that is sadly a fair assessment, and I mean sadly for the sake of the country. I think everyone's really fed up. I mean, we had the Conservatives, people saying we need a change, we need this change to happen now, we need it to happen quickly, and I think people's patience is a lot thinner than maybe it would be given the kind of context that we've had over the past few years. People just want things to improve, they want their life to be easier, and they're not seeing it at the moment. I know that things don't just happen overnight, it's not magic. I wish it could be, but it's not.
But no, I think a lot of people are not even heading in the right direction. It's interesting, the polling shows even Labour people are saying this.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. It's the amount of people who voted Labour really enthusiastically at the election, which was only, 6 months ago?
Well, no more than voted Labour in 2019. I mean, this wasn't, Tony Blair style.
It wasn't, but
97 stuff.
It wasn't, but they won, right? And there were people who felt really enthusiastic, really hopeful, and thought that this was the time that things would finally change. And now,
how's that working out for
some of those people are just saying, where do we go? Where do we go? We tried the Conservatives, we've tried Labour. What is the alternative?
And again, that is the interesting thing when you do see people like Donald Trump coming through. Yes, now he's basically completely got control of the Republican Party, but we're seen very much as upstart in 2016. A lot of people said we couldn't do it again. And then we see what's going on in Europe as well. So many of those parties on the right, often decried as far right, pushing policies which would have been mainstream 10 years ago. It is really interesting to see. I mean, it's going to be a rip-roaring 4 years to watch in America. I think it's going to be a bit of a duller time for us here in the UK. But I think that I certainly get the feeling that there are changes afoot.
In what sense?
In our political, we've got a first past the post system, but there is just a feeling that people simply are going, this just isn't going to be good enough anymore.
Yeah, I think that's really true, and I think people are more willing to take a chance on smaller parties for that reason, whether it's Reform, whether it's the Greens, whether it's the independent MPs, whoever it may be. People are more open to taking that risk.
I mean, you are taking a chance with the Greens, just saying. I mean, if you want to have your, no electricity and not ever go on holiday again and not have a car, go for it.
You're taking a chance with all of them, effectively. I mean, I know that, you can more easily argue it's less of a risk with Reform, but we have to remember that Nigel Farage has not been an MP before. We don't have an awful lot to really look at evidence and prove
I
that.
do. I mean, that's the funny thing is, I mean, I've known him for a very long time. I remember interviewing him about 20 years ago. Like, what was the first thing you'd do on day one if you won? I'd go to the pub. Yeah, that's not going to fly this time around. Although, Donald Trump would get away with that sort of thing if he was a drinker. Alicia Fitzgerald, so appreciate you joining us, political correspondent who watched PMQs. I've had a little note from Peter Cardwell. He is very unwell. We send our love to you, my darling. We do so much. Still man flu. Anyway, 12:45 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking about how we're going to deal with benefit cheats. Oh, it's really, really simple. We're going to ban them from driving legally. I mean, if you took their cars, then maybe they couldn't drive. But we'll see how well that will work out. We'll also try and squeeze in some more of your calls on Southport as well. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. What a beautiful name. The Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, Canada and the United States, that would really be something. All hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you very much for joining us. 12:49 is the time. Just some breaking news. We had a press statement given by West Midlands Police about that awful stabbing yesterday in broad daylight in Birmingham. A 14-year-old boy has been arrested after a 12-year-old boy was stabbed to death. They just get younger and younger every week, don't they? He's also being held in connection with an assault on a woman aged in her 80s in the same area of the city on Sunday. Claire Pearce, or former Home Office advisor. I mean, where do you even start? OK, innocent until proven guilty, but we're not going to know his name. We can't prejudice the trial. We're not going to know his name. No. We'll never know his name because he's 14. But I mean,
where do you start? Well, where's the family?
Yeah, well, where's Dad?
Okay.
I'm sorry. No,
Yeah.
Mums are nearly always around. Where's Dad?
But Mum obviously isn't being very effective if child
it's
is out
difficult.
running
I mean,
around.
yeah. I mean,
oh, come on, you would know.
No. I mean,
was
running
running around with
my daughter
bad
would be
people
dead
in
if
the
she
night.
started doing stuff like that. But at my own hands, I'm sorry, but I mean, it is just mind blowing what is being allowed to happen. It's, this is routine on London streets now. We don't bat an eyelid. This is just normal behaviour. But this is absolutely just extraordinary. And then the Westminster police are saying this is a very distressing incident. Yeah. Do you think? But same old, same old. But don't worry, we'll have a little law in the Amazon and double two-factor authentication to buy a knife, and job done. Right, this dear listener, let's go on to another topic. Big announcement from the government today. They're trying to get on the front foot, and this is about dealing with benefit cheats, benefit fraudsters who won't pay the money back. You're supposed to pay the money back, and if you're on benefits, they can take the money back out of your benefits to take about 20 quid a week. It's hardly a punishment. Or if you're earning, they can take it out of your PAYE earnings from the bank. But very difficult to get it back if you can. If you refuse to do that, and you're not getting any of that income. So now their latest wheeze is to follow what they've done with the CSA, with basically deadbeat dads, and they want to basically say, well, we're going to take away your driving licence for 2 years. What a brilliant idea. That'll solve it, won't it? Let's talk to Chris Snowdon. He's head of lifestyle economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Very good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Julia.
I mean, this is obviously the solution. We're going to have now a load of convicted benefit cheats driving around in their cars without a driving licence, and presumably also without tax and insurance as well. So I'm sure the sum of happiness in the country will improve as a result of this.
Yeah, it's quite a fun policy, isn't it? I mean, I'm not against it in principle.
No.
I guess it's a form of punishment. It just seems kind of random to be introducing it as a form of punishment for this particular offence rather than just general driving offences, which is normal, or indeed any other offences. I mean, normally, ideally, we'd send these people to prison, but we don't seem to have the space.
Yes.
There does seem to me the issue of, seeing this is only going to affect people who are working, which may well be quite a small proportion of benefit fraudsters anyway. It might, in fact, mean that people can no longer drive to work and lose their jobs and then have to go on benefits.
Legitimately.
So I don't know. Look, it seems a bit of a gimmick to me. I mean, there is a huge problem with the entire welfare state. It's absolutely enormous, and we need to be cutting it. And politicians like to talk about clamping down on fraud, and we should do. And the amount of benefit fraud has gone up enormously since COVID. It went up during COVID to an incredible extent, but it's hardly come down since, which is really worrying. So there is a job of work to be done with this, but we need to catch these people first and foremost. And then if we do this rather daft thing of taking their license off them, fair enough. But are we going to catch the people who are driving around without a licence? What are the odds of being caught if you're driving around without a licence?
And there are millions of those people. And again, also, if there is an accident, they don't have insurance, and therefore the poor sod who's got hit by them, well, they're having to claim on their insurance, their premiums go up. I mean, I'm not quite sure this solves the problem. As you say, it's a bit of a random thing. Why don't we stop them getting on planes? I mean, it seems strange. But also, I mean, the benefit fraud aspect, for so many years, the left has argued, people avoiding tax or evading tax, which is criminal. Oh, you don't tackle that, but you do worry about benefit fraud. Benefit fraud is in its billions and billions and billions, and it's not just someone claiming a little bit more housing benefit or a little bit more that. It's organised crime. I've got a friend who worked, literally on the phones during COVID on a benefits counter, where you'd have these organised crime. You could actually hear the people. You could hear all the other people in the room making their claims at the same time, and they would say, I'm claiming. I mean, this is my name. I'm claiming this. Money was being handed out left, right, and centre. She's rather more ruthless, and she would say things like, "Oh, remind me, what's your middle name?" They wouldn't know their middle name. Well, who doesn't know their middle name? And she's like, "Yeah, right. Sorry, dodgy. No, phone down." You should say. She'd even say things like, "Oh, well, that's the road you live in. Oh, yes. So that's the one with this pub at the end of the road, isn't it?" And they wouldn't know what she's talking about. And she's like, "Yeah. You clearly don't live in that road because that pub has been there for 50 years. Now, if you have people who are willing to ask those questions, then you might catch a few more of these people. But it's on an industrial scale, and we don't even know how many of these claims are fraudulent.
No, we don't. That's one point, actually. It's a good point. I mean, we don't. So when people try and bring it to a comparison between tax evasion and benefit fraud, we don't really know what either of those figures are. In fact, the figures that the left use tend to just include a lot of things that are actually quite illegal. Tax avoidance, which they just think should be illegal, which is obviously...
Apart from when they're buying cheap booze at the airport, which is also tax avoidance. They've got no issue with that.
Let's not clamp down on that. But look, I mean, it's possible to do two things at the same time.
Yeah.
We can clamp down on tax evasion while also clamping down on benefit fraud. There is a lot of both. They're both worth billions of pounds. But like everything in this country, you know, people talk about how we have a big state. Well, we have a big state in terms of what it spends, but most of what it spends is just transfers, and a lot of the transfers are benefits, right? Yeah. What we don't have is a big state in terms of people doing things that, you know, a competent state should be doing. HMRC, for example, is I would say not particularly overstaffed. There's not too many people going around working for trading standards or trying to catch benefit cheats. What we have is a lot of people in what I would consider to be non-jobs, but primarily transferring money around. So we've got £35 billion in housing benefit. We've got £90 billion rising fast in sickness benefit. These are the easy wins, actually. If Rachel Reeves really wants to find some money lying on the pavement, dealing with
it's literally there.
And housing benefit would be the way to go.
Yeah, there were some reports at the weekend that there's a little bit of, you know, irritation in Downing Street about Liz Kendall, the Work and Pensions Secretary, about, you know, then she's not moving fast enough in identifying this. But I don't know anybody, and I ask around lots of people, you know, different walks of life. If you're saying that every single person I know knows somebody in their friendship group or their family who they believe is falsely claiming benefits. Now, they might not technically be committing fraud and couldn't be criminalised for it, but they could work. They absolutely could work, and they don't need to claim those benefits. And that is where it's happening on the grand scale, of people claiming sickness benefits for life, basically getting double the benefits if they claim sickness, self-diagnosed mental health problems. A Lords Committee report suggested this in the last week. And we are just paying out an absolute fortune for an awful lot of people who are perfectly capable of working to not work. I'm wondering what your reaction was to Donald Trump's announcements. We know about, you know, the Department of Government Efficiency, a freeze on all federal hiring, basically freezing and basically putting everyone on hold and planning to sack everyone involved in federal government and every federal funded body who involved in DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion. I mean, is this the sort of thing you'd be looking for?
I'd like to see the details. It sounds like he's using a bit of a sledgehammer approach here, but yeah, broadly speaking, yes. And also the Javier Milei, Afuera system of, get rid of entire departments. I think you really could do that. The government needs to focus on fewer things and doing them well. Yeah. That's a simple message.
You know what, that's a wonderful idea. Just the really basic stuff that we actually need done, and everything else. Well, the same with local councils, isn't it? Who said they haven't got any money to you know, fix potholes, but seem to be involved in every sort of, I don't know, you know, funding every Pride parade or this or that random community action. You think, could you keep the street lights on and, you know, pick up the rubbish and fix the potholes and you know, the social care? Can you do the basics?
Yeah, and maybe these things actually don't cost that much in the great scheme of things, and social care is enormously expensive. But it's more symbolic than anything else, isn't it? When you see the NHS wasting money on all these ridiculous initiatives, I'm sure it is a tiny fraction of the NHS budget, because the NHS budget is absolutely enormous, but it's what it says about the people who are running it. They're not even trying to pretend that they are, you know, really trying to make the best use of any penny they're given.
I liken it to the people who sell out, you know, I've got no money, but they're buying their, you know, their Starbucks coffee for sort of £4 every day. Do you think? I mean, you could at least start with some of the basics of cutting back, but there we are. Chris Snowdon from the Institute of Economic Affairs, as always, absolute pleasure speaking to you. Claire Pearsall, your reaction to, I mean, the benefit cheats. There's definitely some issues there also in terms of free, you know, personal freedom and wanting to sort of, you know, basically look into bank accounts as well. There's all that. Yeah,
it's the government oversight of what we do in our lives and how we spend our money, I think, is getting quite concerning, the powers that they want to have over us. Stop benefit cheats by all accounts. But I don't see that removing a driving licence is going to make a blindest bit of difference.
No, I have a funny feeling that people with benefit cheats might be willing to drive without having a licence. I know, I'm going out on a limb. Anyway, Claire, it's been absolutely fabulous having your company. Thank you very much indeed. Delighted to be joined now by Mr. Ian Collins.
Do you know what I found out? Kevin O'Sullivan's been signing on for 24 years and no one knew. Nobody noticed.
Oh, I guess. That's right, yeah. It explains so much.
Every 2 weeks he's over there diligently donking on, as they used to call it.
You don't have to do that. You don't have to turn up anymore.
No, I think you do. You probably don't. There's an app for that kind of caper. So we have to do, just press the app. Would you like